I still drive past Highway 37 sometimes. Not because I want to, more because I can't seem to take any other road. It's like that stretch of asphalt got stuck in my head, the way some songs do, or a smell, or a face. It's been 2 years since Ethan disappeared. 2 years since I woke up to an empty dorm room that didn't feel empty in the usual way. It felt hollow, like something had been peeled out of it. We were sophomores at Grand Valley College then. Our dorm was small, a square room split by a line of masking tape that marked our sides. He was the neat one. I was the messy one. He liked to run early in the mornings when the world was still blue and quiet. I used to tease him about it. Said he was training for a zombie apocalypse. That's kind of funny now. That week in October had been bad from the start. Midterms. Endless rain. The kind of cold that sticks to your fingers. The dorm heating wasn't working and the windows leaked. Everything smelled faintly of wet socks and instant noodles. Ethan had been restless, like he couldn't sit still for more than a few minutes. He kept checking his phone, staring at the same number in his contacts. You ever call someone just to make sure they're still real? He asked me once, half joking. I said no, but the question bothered me. On Thursday night, I remember lying in bed scrolling through Reddit while Ethan sat at his desk with his head in his hands. The desk lamp was on, painting everything in that sick yellow glow. He said he'd lost his dorm key earlier that day, somewhere between class and the cafeteria. He turned his backpack inside out, checked every pocket, every pair of jeans. Nothing. I remember telling him to relax, that we could get a replacement from housing in the morning. He didn't answer, just kept staring at the floor. Around 1 a.m., I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, he was gone. At first, I didn't think much of it. Ethan often went for late-night runs when he couldn't sleep, but this time felt different. His phone was still on the desk, screen glowing faintly. His wallet was there too, and his shoes lined up neatly by the door. He'd gone outside barefoot. I sat up, confused, the chill from the window crawling across my arms. His side of the room looked untouched. Bed made, jacket hanging on the chair, his duffel bag half zipped with laundry inside. I called his name softly, thinking maybe he was in the bathroom. No answer. Then I saw it. His dorm key, lying in the middle of the floor. It was just there, perfectly centered on the cheap gray carpet, like someone had placed it down with care. I bent to pick it up, and it felt cold, like metal that had been outside in the wind. That's when the noise started, a low hum, almost like static, coming from somewhere outside the window. It wasn't loud, but it had this pressure to it, like it was underneath everything. I thought it was the power lines at first, but the sound didn't fade when I turned off the light. It stayed. I walked to the window, half asleep, half scared. The parking lot outside was empty, just the orange streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. And beyond that, the dark stretch of Highway 37. Something was moving out there. At first I thought it was a person, just a shadow shifting against the light. But the longer I stared, the more it didn't look right. Too tall, maybe. Too still. It was standing at the edge of the road, facing the trees, not the dorms. Like it was waiting for something. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe fog. Maybe just exhaustion. I was good at convincing myself things were fine back then. The next morning, Ethan didn't come back. Campus police took a statement. They searched his social media, called his parents, checked the security footage. He hadn't left through the main doors. There was no sign of him on any camera. They said maybe he'd gone out a window, maybe taken a ride from someone. But how do you leave without your shoes? They dragged the nearby woods for 2 weeks. Volunteers, dogs, drones, the works. Nothing. Not a trace. No footprints, no clothing, no body. I kept thinking about that key. I still have it. I know I shouldn't, but I couldn't give it up. It's in my desk drawer, wrapped in a napkin from the dining hall. Every few months, I take it out and look at it, just to remind myself he was real. The last text Ethan sent was time-stamped 1:13 a.m. I was asleep when it came through. It just said, he has it. No context. No follow-up. His phone records showed nothing else after that. No outgoing calls, no app activity, nothing. I showed it to the cops. They thought he was talking about his lost key, that maybe someone had found it and he'd gone out to meet them, but that's not what I think. A few nights after he vanished, I started hearing the hum again. The same sound from that night, low, pulsing, like a heartbeat under the world. It always came from outside the window. Sometimes I'd wake up to it, faint but steady, vibrating through the glass. One night, I opened the curtains and saw a man standing on the shoulder of Highway 37. He was wearing a gray hoodie, hands in his pockets, head tilted just slightly like he was listening. Even from the distance, I could tell he wasn't breathing right. His chest didn't move the way it should. I wanted to shout, to ask if he'd seen Ethan, but something in me froze. My voice wouldn't work. It felt like if I spoke, he'd look up and something awful would happen, so I just stood there, gripping the edge of the windowsill until the hum stopped. By the time I looked again, he was gone. After that, things started to change. My phone alarm would go off at 1:13 every night, even when I deleted it, even when I turned the phone off completely. I'd wake up, the screen glowing faintly, that number staring back at me. One night, I woke to find the dorm door cracked open an inch. I didn't remember unlocking it. On the floor just inside was a trail of wet footprints, barefoot, leading from the hallway to the center of the room. And there, sitting perfectly still under the desk, was Ethan's duffel bag, emptied out. All his clothes were neatly folded beside it. And the key was gone. I didn't sleep after that. By morning, the bag and clothes had vanished again. My roommate's parents stopped calling. The college moved me to a different building, farther from the highway. But the sound followed. Faint, distant, always around 1 a.m. Sometimes when I'm driving, my phone will light up with a missed call from unknown. The timestamp is always 1:13. When I answer, there's nothing. Just that hum. I've told this story before. To cops, to friends, to therapists. They all say the same thing. Grief does strange things to memory. Maybe I saw a drifter that night. Maybe Ethan ran away. Maybe my mind filled in the rest. But I know what I saw. And last week, driving down Highway 37 again, I saw the man. He was standing in the same spot as before. Hands in his hoodie pockets, head tilted just slightly. The streetlights hit his face this time, and I realized why it had looked so wrong before. It wasn't a face at all. Just a smooth, colorless surface, like someone had erased it. I pulled over without thinking. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. I wanted to take a picture, proof that I wasn't losing it. But when I looked up again, the man was gone. In his place, lying in the middle of the road, was a single key. I didn't pick it up. I drove home, locked every door, and checked my drawer. The napkin was there, but it was empty. Ethan's key is gone, and I think he finally found the one who had it. I didn't move out right away after Ethan disappeared. They offered to transfer me, but I told them I was fine. Maybe part of me thought he'd come back and laugh at the whole thing. Say it was a prank or some breakdown I didn't understand, but he didn't come back. And the room didn't feel like mine anymore. The air was heavy, stale, like the walls remembered too much. His side of the room stayed untouched. The bed still made, the lamp still pointed at his textbooks, and that faint smell of his shampoo hanging in the sheets. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing over at his chair, expecting to see him sitting there, head bent, tapping his pencil against the desk. The silence was the worst part. It wasn't just quiet, it was thick. The kind that presses against your ears, like the whole world is holding its breath. The first time I heard it, it was maybe a week after he vanished. I'd been trying to sleep, face buried under the blanket, phone screen still glowing beside me. Around 2 a.m., I heard a voice, faint, from the other side of the room. It wasn't a shout or whisper, more like someone murmuring just under their breath. A soft, steady rhythm, almost like he was talking to himself. I froze. My mind said no. My body said yes. Every nerve lit up like it knew the voice before my brain did. It was Ethan. I didn't move for a full minute. Just listened. The words were impossible to make out, muffled by the dark. But the tone was his. The way he used to mutter while studying. The small pauses he'd take when thinking. "Ethan?" I said. My voice cracked. "You here, man?" Silence. I sat up, heart racing, staring across the room. His bed was empty. The window was shut. The door locked. I told myself I'd dreamed it. Stress, exhaustion, the usual excuses. But the next night it happened again, only louder. This time, it sounded like it was coming from under the desk. The same rhythm, that same low murmur, but it wasn't words now, it was syllables. Like he was trying to talk but couldn't form sentences. My skin crawled. I slid out of bed 1 foot at a time and stood there in the dark. The voice stopped. I flicked on the light. Nothing. Just the same cold air and Ethan's half-empty desk drawer. I stayed awake until sunrise, staring at that spot under the desk like it might open up. By Monday, I hadn't slept in 3 days. Classes blurred together. People stopped asking how I was. Even my RA started avoiding eye contact. They said I looked sick, sunken eyes, pale skin. I started to think maybe they were right. Maybe it was all in my head. But then came the tapping. It started one afternoon while I was studying. 3 sharp knocks from inside the wall between my desk and Ethan's. Then silence. Then 3 more. I got up, pressed my ear to the drywall, and heard breathing. Not deep, shallow, shaky. I whispered his name again. Ethan? The breathing stopped. That night, the dorm lights flickered 3 times and went out completely. Backup power didn't kick in. The whole floor went dark. I sat in my bed, phone flashlight trembling in my hand. From across the room, I heard something move, a scrape of fabric, a soft exhale. I aimed my phone light toward his bed. His sheets were creased, like someone had just gotten up. I ran out into the hallway, barefoot, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing it. I waited in the stairwell until the power came back on. When I finally went back to my room, his bed was smooth again, perfectly made. That's when I started recording. Every night I'd leave my phone on his desk, camera pointed at his bed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want another wellness check, another clipboard, another fake smile. The first 2 nights, nothing. But on the 3rd, I caught something. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the camera flickered. For about 6 seconds, the frame went static, and then the angle shifted. Like someone had moved the phone an inch to the left, and under the static, faint but clear, was a whisper. 2 words. Found it. I don't remember breathing for a long time after I heard that. That phrase, found it, was burned into my head. The next day, I went to housing and demanded to see the old security footage again. They wouldn't let me. Said it was all logged, all reviewed, no sign of him leaving. But I wasn't convinced anymore that he left. Something stayed behind. I started, hearing his voice during the day now. Little flashes, like echoes. I'd be brushing my teeth, and somewhere in the hum of the vent, I'd hear him laugh. Or I'd drop a pen, and in the tiny sound it made hitting the floor, I'd hear him say my name. The mind fills in blanks. I kept repeating that. The mind fills in blanks. Until one night, the voice spoke back. I was lying in bed, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. The air felt heavy, pressing down on me. Then, from somewhere close, too close, I heard a whisper right beside my ear. "Why'd you move my key?" My stomach dropped. My hands clenched around the blanket so tight my nails cut into my palms. I didn't open my eyes. I just whispered back, "Ethan?" No answer. When I finally forced myself to look, no one was there. But the key, the one I'd been keeping in the drawer, was on my pillow. That was the night I started sleeping in my car. Still, I couldn't stay away for long. There's something wrong about that place, but it pulls at me. Like whatever's in there wants me to see something I'm missing. A week later, I went back. The door creaked when I pushed it open. The room smelled the same. Old coffee, damp wood, that faint sweetness from Ethan's side. Everything was exactly how I'd left it, except for one thing. There were words scratched into the wall above his bed. Not carved deep, just light etchings, like done with a key. It said, "Listen." So I did. I turned off the light and sat in the dark. The hum came first, then the faint sound of breathing. Then the voice again, closer now, more distinct. He was talking to someone, not me. The words were broken, confused. Something about the man on the road and the sound in the wires. And then a pause. And then my name. Soft, desperate. He said it again. "Please help me." I didn't know what to do. I just whispered, "How?" Silence stretched out. Then barely audible. "He's under. That's all." Just those 2 words. The next morning, I pulled his desk away from the wall. Behind it, there was a vent cover. I unscrewed it. Inside was a narrow duct, maybe wide enough for an arm. I reached in. Dust, lint, then something cold. Metal. When I pulled it out, it wasn't a key this time. It was his student ID card. The surface was warped, melted at the edges like it had been near heat. His picture was still visible, eyes wide, smile faint. The back of the card had one word written in black marker: listen. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't hand it over. I just kept it, like I had the key, like all of this meant something only I could understand. That night, the voice came back stronger, louder. "Get out," it said. "Get out before he finds you." I didn't move. I was too scared to even breathe. Then came another voice. Lower, rougher, like someone trying to copy a human voice and not quite getting it right. Too late. The sound of footsteps followed, bare feet on the tile, slow, deliberate, coming from Ethan's side of the room. I stared into the dark, my eyes straining, heart slamming in my chest. There was movement, a faint shape rising from his bed. It looked like someone standing, but the proportions were wrong. Too long. The neck bent forward like it was listening. I blinked, and it was gone. When I turned on the light, the word on the wall had changed. It no longer said listen, it said follow. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I haven't slept, haven't gone back to class. I keep hearing Ethan's voice through my headphones now, even when nothing's playing. Just faint, glitching static, whispering words I can't quite catch. And sometimes, buried deep under the noise, I can hear another voice. The same rough one. The one that said it was too late. I think it's closer now. Every night, the sound grows louder. Every night, at 1:13, my phone lights up with a new notification. It's an audio file. No sender, no subject, just the same name each time. Ethan 37. And when I play it, I hear breathing, and then him, saying my name, and the sound of something walking in the hallway outside my door. I didn't even know the closet was locked until a month after Ethan disappeared. It sounds stupid saying that out loud, but it's true. We never used it. The old dorms had weird layouts. 2 small wardrobes built into the wall, then this third door, painted the same color as the plaster. I always assumed it was just utility space. After everything that happened, the voices, the scratches, the recordings, I stopped sleeping there. But one night I went back, just to grab some things. Clothes, notes, the last bits of myself I hadn't already moved out. The air in that room hadn't changed. It still carried that damp, heavy stillness that made breathing feel like work. The blinds rattled slightly even though the window was closed, and the faint smell of Ethan's cologne lingered in the sheets. I told myself I'd be quick, in and out. But while I was packing, I dropped one of my notebooks. It slid under the bed, and when I reached for it, my hand brushed something cold. A draft. There shouldn't have been a draft. When I got down on my stomach and looked closer, I saw it. Air, moving through a thin gap along the bottom of that third door. The utility one. I stood up, went over, and tried the handle. It didn't move. Locked, solid. For some reason, that made my chest tighten. I'd lived in that room for almost 2 years and never thought to open it. Never even wondered what was behind it. Now it felt like it was watching me. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. No humming, no whispers, just silence. Still, the idea of a locked door in his room, it started gnawing at me. The next morning I asked maintenance if they had a key. The guy frowned and said that closet was sealed decades ago. Something about wiring, asbestos, unsafe storage. He said it hadn't been opened since the 80s. That should have been enough for me. But the second he said sealed, it became an obsession. That night, I came back with a screwdriver. The lock gave easier than I expected. The metal was old and brittle, like it had been rusting for years. I remember the soft click when it broke. It sounded too loud, like the room didn't want me to hear it. When the door creaked open, the smell hit first. Damp wood, rot, a faint sweetness underneath, like something spoiled a long time ago. I shone my phone light inside. It wasn't a closet at all. Not really. Just a narrow cavity between the walls, barely wide enough to step into. The wallpaper inside didn't match the rest of the room. It was an older pattern, peeling and faded, and there were things in there. Stacks of notebooks, torn pages, empty water bottles. A blanket balled up in the corner. Someone had been living in there. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My brain just refused to catch up. Then I noticed something scratched into the plaster near the floor. Words. Don't let him in. I wanted to believe it was old graffiti, some leftover joke from the 80s, but the handwriting looked familiar. It was Ethan's. My throat went dry. I crouched down and picked up one of the notebooks. The cover was soft from wear, the pages warped with moisture. His name was written inside the front. Ethan McKay. Same handwriting, same little loops he used to make on his lowercase y. I flipped to the last page. There were words scribbled over and over again. He listens through the wall. Don't sleep. He wants the key. My phone flashlight flickered, then died. I dropped the notebook. The darkness in that narrow space felt alive. I stumbled back, heart pounding, trying to get the door shut again, but something stopped it from closing all the way. Something was wedged at the bottom. When I knelt and pulled it out, my hand brushed cold metal. It was Ethan's key, the one that had vanished from my drawer. I stared at it, every instinct screaming to run, but I couldn't look away. The teeth of the key were bent, blackened, like it had been burned. Then, faintly from inside the closet, I heard movement. Not footsteps, not breathing, just a soft scrape, like someone dragging their nails slowly across the wall. I slammed the door. The sound stopped. For the next hour, I sat on the floor with my back against that door, staring at the key in my hand. I couldn't tell if it was colder than the room or if my body was just numb. When I finally stood up, I shoved a chair under the handle and left the dorm again. That night, I slept in my car. But around 1:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message, no sender. Just one sentence. You shouldn't have opened it. I didn't go back for 2 days. But something in me knew I couldn't leave it like that. I had to see what else was in there. When I finally returned, the air inside the dorm felt wrong, heavier. The smell from that closet had spread through the whole room now, sweet and sour. Like fruit left too long in the sun. The chair I'd wedged under the handle was knocked over. The closet door was open. Inside, the notebooks were gone. Every one of them. Only the blanket remained, damp, dark, with stains I didn't want to identify. And on the wall, where the words had been scratched, new writing had appeared. Fresh and uneven. I never left. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the rug. The air felt electric, vibrating. My ears started to ring. A high, thin sound that built until it drowned everything else out. Then, from inside that dark space, I heard a voice. Low, calm, Ethan's voice. Why did you come back? It wasn't echoing like before. It wasn't in my head this time. It was coming from in there. I whispered, Ethan! No response. Then, slowly, a hand reached out from the darkness. I froze. My brain didn't even process fear, just disbelief. The skin looked pale, grayish, fingertips dark like bruises. It hovered in the doorway, trembling slightly, and then pointed at me. You shouldn't have moved the key, he said. His voice was soft but real, too real. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the hand drew back into the dark. I slammed the door shut again and ran out. I didn't pack. I didn't lock up. I just ran until I was outside, gasping in the cold air. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I've been staying in a cheap motel outside town. But it doesn't matter. The sounds followed me here. The tapping in the walls. The faint breathing at night. The occasional voice whispering just out of reach. Yesterday, the motel clerk slipped a note under my door. No handwriting. Just printed letters. Room inspection tomorrow. Except, when I went to the front desk, they said they never left it. And last night, I woke up to the closet door in the motel room slightly open. There's no closet here. Just a small storage hatch in the corner. Inside it, I found another one of Ethan's notebooks. The same kind from the dorm, same handwriting. The first page just said, "He's not me." And on the last page, scrawled in dark ink, "He can use my voice now." I think I finally understand what the messages meant, what the key really was. It wasn't for the door. It was for something else, a link, a way in. And when I opened that closet, I unlocked it. I can hear him even now, in the walls, in the hum of the air conditioner, the same low rhythm of his breathing, the same voice whispering my name over and over again. He sounds so much like Ethan, but I know it's not him, because when I checked the motel security camera this morning, I saw myself sleeping in bed. And a second me standing in the corner facing the closet door. It was close to midnight when I saw the car. I was driving home from work, 3rd shift at the plant. The kind of job that makes every night feel the same. Empty roads, dead radio stations, and that tired hum of tires against asphalt. Highway 37 was long and straight, cutting through miles of nothing. No houses, no gas stations, just trees and shadows. That night, the fog was heavier than usual. It hung low, soft, and gray, swallowing the light from my headlights before it could go far. I had the window cracked open, letting in cold air to keep myself awake. That's when I noticed the glow ahead of me, tail lights parked on the shoulder. At first, I figured it was just someone pulled over. Maybe a flat tire, maybe they'd hit a deer. But as I got closer, I realized the car wasn't just parked. It was idling. The engine was running. I slowed down, heart ticking a little faster. There's something about finding another car in the middle of nowhere that never feels right. Especially one left like that. With the lights on, the motor humming, and no one around. I pulled over a few feet behind it and killed my engine. For a moment, I just sat there, watching the white exhaust roll out of its tailpipe and fade into the fog. It was an old blue sedan. Looked like a 90s Honda, maybe. The paint dull, the rear bumper dented. The driver's door was slightly open. I waited. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe someone to step out, wave, say thanks for stopping, but no one did. The highway was silent except for the faint idle of that car and the wind moving through the trees. I finally got out. The air was sharp and cold, heavy with that damp smell of fog. I walked slowly, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. "Hello?" I called out. My voice disappeared almost instantly. No answer. I got close enough to see the inside. The driver's seat was empty. The headlights were still on, cutting through the mist ahead. There was a phone sitting on the passenger seat. And a cup of coffee in the holder, steam still rising from it. Whoever had been here hadn't left long ago. I looked around. The woods on both sides of the highway were thick. No houses, no lights, just darkness. I called out again, louder this time. "Hey, you need help?" Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. The car door wasn't just open. It was bent, like it had been forced from the inside. That's when the unease started to crawl up my spine. I checked the ground around the car. There were footprints, barefoot by the look of them, leading away from the shoulder and into the trees. The shape of each toe pressed clearly into the wet dirt. They weren't deep like someone running, more like someone walking slowly. I don't know why I followed them. Curiosity maybe, or that stupid sense of responsibility you get when you think someone might be hurt. I took my flashlight from the glove box and started toward the tree line. The sound of the car engine faded behind me, replaced by the quiet drip of water falling from the branches. The footprints went on for maybe 20 yards before stopping suddenly. No sign of where they'd gone, just gone. like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. That's when I heard something, a faint click, like metal tapping metal. I turned the flashlight around, scanning the trees. The beam hit fog, bark, more fog. Then movement, something pale between the trunks. I froze. My mouth went dry. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. It looked like a person, barefoot, wearing a white shirt. They were standing just far enough that I couldn't make out their face. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm. "You okay?" The figure didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, slightly tilted, head to one side. The tapping sound came again. Not from them, from behind me. I spun around. The car door was closing, slow and steady, until it clicked shut. The engine stopped. Silence swallowed the highway. When I turned back to the trees, the figure was gone. That's when I started walking fast, then running. I got to my truck, slammed the door, locked it. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice before the engine started. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The car's headlights were off now, but I swear I saw someone sitting in the driver's seat, just for a moment. I drove the rest of the way home barely breathing, checking the mirrors every few seconds. Nothing followed me, or at least I didn't see anything. When I got home, it was 12:47 a.m. I sat in the driveway for almost 10 minutes before going inside. My house was dark, quiet. I went straight to the kitchen, poured a drink, and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe the car broke down. Maybe someone came back while I was in the woods. But then I noticed the smell. It wasn't in my head. It was real, a faint burnt metallic scent, like overheated metal and exhaust fumes. I followed it to the front door. On the outside, right above the handle, was a single, wet handprint, bare human. The next morning, I called the highway patrol. They said they'd check it out. A few hours later, they called back. Said there was no car, no sign of anything abandoned on 37. I told them I'd seen it with my own eyes. They asked for the exact location. I gave it to them down to the mile marker. They said they'd been through that stretch twice. Nothing. I didn't know what to say. I just hung up. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the coffee, the footprints, the shape in the trees. Around 1 a.m., I got up and looked outside. There, parked across the street, was a car. Same color, same dents, headlights off, but the faint glow of the dashboard light flickering through the fogged windshield. It sat there for hours. Engine off, no movement. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of that handprint, only this time. It was on the inside of my window. The next morning, the car was gone again. I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it all, that exhaustion had made me see things. But deep down, I knew better, because every night since, I've been hearing it. That low, steady hum of an idling engine somewhere outside. Sometimes faint, sometimes close, and when I go to the window, there's nothing. Just the empty street and the mist curling under the streetlights. But the sound doesn't stop. It just moves closer, softer, until I can't tell if it's coming from outside or from the other side of the wall. I didn't sleep much after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that engine again. The low hum, steady and endless, like it was still waiting out there on the shoulder of Highway 37. I'd wake up sweating, my heart pounding, convinced I'd see those taillights through my window. But the street outside stayed dark. By morning, I'd convinced myself I needed answers, real ones. So I drove down to the county sheriff's office. Small building, half parking lot, half dirt. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and copier ink. A deputy at the front desk looked up when I walked in. "Help you?" I told him what I'd seen. The car, the footprints, the man in the woods. I even mentioned the handprint on my door. He didn't write anything down at first. Just watched me while I talked, then asked, "What time was this?" "Almost midnight," I said. "Between mile markers 24 and 25. He nodded, finally taking a note. Then he said something that froze my stomach. "We had a unit out there this morning. No vehicle on the shoulder." I said, "Yeah, I know. I called about that." But the car was there. "I saw it," he sighed. "You said the engine was running?" "Yes, and there was steam, like from the exhaust. And footprints. Bare feet," he stopped writing. "Bare feet?" "Yeah," I said. "They went into the woods, then just stopped, The deputy leaned back in his chair. Sir, we get a lot of weird calls on 37. People think they see things in the fog. Could have been anything. You sure it wasn't a trick of the light? I wanted to get angry, but the truth is, part of me wasn't sure anymore. I'd been tired. Maybe I'd imagined some of it. But not all of it. Not the smell of exhaust in my house. Not the handprint. He must have seen something in my face because his tone softened. Look, I'll file a report. We'll check again. Maybe it got towed. Maybe it rolled off into the ditch. That night, I got a call. Sheriff Daniels. Deep voice, slow drawl, the kind of tone that makes you straighten up. He said, "You're the one who reported the car?" "Yes, sir." "Well, we found something." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "The driver?" "No," he said. "Just the car. Or what's left of it." He gave me an address, a storage lot behind a towing yard on the edge of town, and told me to come by if I wanted to see it for myself. I got there around dusk. The sky was a dull orange fading into gray. The lot was fenced in with barbed wire, the kind of place that smelled like oil and rust. A deputy met me at the gate and led me through rows of wrecked cars until we stopped at the end. There it was. Same blue sedan, same dented bumper, but now it looked wrong. The windshield was shattered. The roof was caved in, like something heavy had pressed down on it from above. The paint along the hood was scraped raw, deep gouges running in jagged lines all the way to the headlights. The deputy flicked his cigarette away. "You said this thing was running when you saw it?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "And clean. No damage." He looked at me. "Well, somebody, or something, did a number on it since then." I walked closer, crouched by the hood. The scratches weren't random. They curved inward, overlapping, like claw marks. Too long to be from an animal. Too uneven to be from tools. And there were more, on the roof. The trunk, the door handles, 5 lines, deep enough to cut through paint and metal both. It didn't make sense. I looked through the shattered window. The coffee cup was still there, cold now, half full. The phone on the seat was cracked down the middle, and on the inside of the windshield, faint but visible, were smears. Dark reddish-brown streaks dragged downward by fingers. I turned to the deputy. "Where's the driver?" He shook his head. "No ID, no wallet, nothing. Just an empty car." "Did you find footprints?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "Yeah, we found some. Bare feet, just like you said. But—" He looked away. They didn't lead into the woods this time. They led back to the car. That night I sat at home with the blinds closed and every light on. The house felt too quiet, like the silence was waiting for something to fill it. I kept thinking about what he said, how the footprints came back. What does that mean? I tried to distract myself, pulled up the local news, checked every site I could think of. No missing person reports, no mention of the car, nothing. It was like it never happened. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. Static, then breathing. "Hello?" I said. The breathing stopped. Then, faintly, someone whispered, "You shouldn't have followed." The line went dead. I just sat there, staring at the phone, trying to convince myself it was a prank. But when I looked at the screen, the call history said something impossible. The number wasn't random. It matched the last 4 digits of the phone that had been left in the car. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw those claw marks again. That downward drag of something trying to get out, or trying to pull something in. 2 days later, Sheriff Daniels called again. He sounded tired this time, like he'd been up all night. "I shouldn't even be telling you this," he said. "But that car, you're not the first person to report seeing it." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "There's been 3 other calls, all from different nights. Same description. Blue Honda, engine running, driver missing." He paused, then said, "Except the first report we have is from 2004. I didn't know what to say. My mind couldn't wrap around it. "That's 20 years ago." "Yeah," he said quietly. "And here's the strange part. Each time we find it, it's in worse condition, like it's been sitting somewhere, waiting." I asked him what they were doing with it now. "Locked up in impound," he said. "We're running prints, DNA, whatever we can." But he trailed off. "But what?" I asked. He sighed. "One of my guys was logging evidence last night. He said he heard something inside the car." "What kind of something?" "Breathing." He tried to laugh it off, said it was probably the wind. But I could tell by the way his voice shook that he didn't believe it either. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, things have gotten worse. Every evening around the same time, 12:47 a.m., I hear an engine outside. Always faint like it's a few houses away. By the time I look, there's nothing there. Sometimes, though, I find things. Small things, a smear of oil across my doorstep, gravel scattered in a line leading up to my porch. Once I found a torn strip of blue paint wedged between the boards of my fence. Last night I woke to the sound of tires on gravel, slow, crunching, deliberate. I didn't move. I just listened. The sound stopped right outside my window. I could see the faint glow of headlights through the curtain. For a long time, nothing happened. Then a soft tapping just once against the glass. I held my breath. Then another tap. And another. I forced myself to look. There was a hand pressed against the window, pale, slick with something dark. The fingers left streaks as they dragged down the glass. 5 long marks, curving inward, just like on the car. When I finally got the courage to move, the hand was gone. But outside, in the dirt below the window, were footprints, bare, wet, leading away into the fog. I don't know what the police found when they opened that car, or if they ever really looked. All I know is the claw marks weren't from an animal, they were from hands. And now, sometimes when the night gets quiet enough, I can still hear it, that low hum of an engine, idling somewhere close, waiting for me to look again. It took me a long time to get back on that road. Highway 37. Just hearing the name made my chest tighten. I started taking longer routes to work, even if it meant another 20 minutes of driving. I told myself I was just being cautious, that it was smart to avoid the place where everything started. But deep down, I knew it was fear. Still, curiosity has a way of creeping back into your mind when you're alone. You start to wonder if maybe you imagined things. Maybe your brain filled in the blanks with nightmares. So a week later, I went back. It was late, close to midnight, same time as before. I told myself it was just a drive, nothing more. I wasn't going to stop, wasn't going to look for anything. I just wanted to see the place in daylight's opposite, the same road that had looked so ordinary by morning. I kept the windows up, music low, the kind of silence where every note sounds too loud. The air was colder than it should have been for that time of year. Thin fog hugged the asphalt, rolling across the fields on both sides. Mile marker 23 passed. Then 24, that's where it happened. I slowed down without meaning to. On my right, the shoulder sloped down into darkness. My headlights hit the guardrail, the same dull silver gleam, and for a second, everything looked normal. Just a stretch of empty road. But then I saw it. A shape, standing in the fog about 30 feet ahead. At first, I thought it was a signpost or a tree stump. Then it moved. It was a man. He stood on the shoulder, facing the trees. Perfectly still, his head tilted like he was listening to something deep in the woods. His clothes were dark, wet-looking, hanging loose around him. My heart started hammering. I couldn't see his face, he was turned away, but something about the way he stood felt wrong. Like his limbs didn't fit quite right. Too long, too straight. I slowed down more, the tires crunching against gravel, and then my headlights caught something, his bare feet. That's when I knew. It was him. The man from the car. The missing driver. For a second, I wanted to roll down my window, shout, ask if he needed help. But my throat locked up. Something inside me screamed not to. Instead, I just sat there, hands gripping the wheel, engine idling. He didn't move. Didn't even flinch. The fog drifted around him, and I swear it looked like it clung to his body, like smoke wrapping around a flame. Then slowly he turned. He didn't look at me at first. His head moved just slightly, like he was struggling to find the right angle. Then his eyes found the light, and for the first time I saw his face. It was pale, paler than any skin I'd ever seen, like all the blood had been drained out. His mouth hung open just a little, lips cracked. His eyes were wide, unfocused, but there was something behind them. Recognition. He knew me, or maybe he knew I'd seen him. I couldn't breathe. I just stared back. My pulse thudded in my ears so loud I almost didn't hear it. The soft, wet sound of his feet stepping toward me. One step, then another. He was walking into the light. I slammed my car into reverse. My tires spun against the asphalt before catching. I backed up fast, eyes locked on him the whole time. He didn't run, didn't chase me. He just kept walking, slow and steady, like he knew no matter how far I went, I'd see him again. When I hit the curve, I floored it and didn't stop until the highway turned into city lights. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the key in the door. I sat on the porch, trying to calm down, but the image wouldn't leave my head. His eyes, those pale, colorless eyes that looked both empty and aware. The next day, I told myself I'd imagined it, that it was exhaustion or stress or maybe even guilt. I kept repeating it in my head until it almost sounded true. Almost. But that night, I woke up to the sound of gravel under tires. Slow, crunching, coming from outside my house. I froze. I live alone, on a small road that dead ends at the woods. Nobody drives past my place unless they mean to. I waited, listening. The sound stopped. Then came the soft hum of an idling engine. My stomach dropped. I didn't move for a full minute. Just listened. Then, curiosity, or fear, I don't even know which, made me walk to the window. There were headlights at the end of my driveway, a blue car. Same make, same dents. Same broken windshield glinting in the dark. The driver's seat was empty. I stepped back, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I turned off every light in the house and stood there in the dark, staring through the curtain slit. The car didn't move, didn't turn off. It just sat there, engine humming, a faint wisp of exhaust curling upward like breath in cold air. I must have stood there for 10 minutes before I heard the door creak open. A figure stepped out. He stood under the headlights. Same clothes, same bare feet, wet and shining under the light. His head tilted again, that strange twitching motion like he was trying to hear something that wasn't there. Then he started walking, not toward the road, toward me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a chair. By the time I got to the front door, I heard it, the sound of wet feet slapping the concrete steps. He was right outside. I held my breath, my back pressed against the door. For a long time, there was silence. Then 3 knocks, slow, even knock, knock, knock. I didn't answer. Another pause. Then a voice, low, strained, like it was dragging itself up from water. Why did you leave me? I felt my whole body go cold. It was him, the missing man, the one who disappeared into the woods, the one they never found. I couldn't make a sound. I just stayed there, frozen, my hand gripping the doorknob so hard it hurt. He spoke again, this time closer, like his mouth was right against the wood. It's cold. Out here. I took one shaky step back. Then another. The doorknob twitched. Just a little. Like something testing it from the other side. Then it stopped. Silence. When I finally worked up the nerve to look out the window, the car was gone. No lights. No sound. But in the morning, when I stepped outside, there were footprints on the porch. Bare feet. Dark stains where they'd stood, and at the edge of the steps, a handprint. Pressed into the wood like something hot had burned it there. I called the police. They didn't find anything. No tire tracks, no car. Just me, trembling on my porch, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. Sheriff Daniels came by later that day. He didn't say much at first. Just looked tired. Older than he had a week ago. Then he told me something I'll never forget. You weren't the only one who saw him, he said. Last night, a trucker reported a man walking down Highway 37. Said he was waving his arms trying to flag someone down. Did they find him? I asked. Daniels nodded slowly. They found a man. Middle of the road. No pulse. My heart stopped. Was it him? The sheriff hesitated, then shook his head. No, different man. But get this, his car was still running. Doors wide open. Same model. Same color. I couldn't respond. I just kept thinking about that voice at my door. The words it said, "Why did you leave me?" It sounded desperate, not angry, like something caught between this world and another, trying to come back. Now, every night, I dream I'm driving down that same road again. The fog is thicker this time. The headlights cut through it in weak, pale beams, and up ahead, there's always someone standing on the shoulder. Sometimes he waves. Sometimes he doesn't move at all, but every time I see the same eyes in my rearview mirror, pale, wide, and waiting. I haven't told anyone this, but last night I woke up with mud on my feet. My keys were on the table by the door. My car engine was still warm, and when I checked my dash cam this morning, there was a single frame of footage, just one, a man standing on the side of Highway 37, smiling. I told myself I wouldn't drive that road again. After what happened, I swore I was done with Highway 37. But sometimes, life has a way of pushing you right back toward the places you're trying to forget. It was a Friday night, raining hard, and I was coming back from my sister's house 2 towns over. My phone was dead, GPS useless. The detour signs on the interstate had been moved. Probably kids messing around. So before I realized it, I was already there. Highway 37. The road looked different in the rain. Slick, black, endless. My headlights carved through the fog like weak candles, and every mile marker felt like a warning I couldn't read. I told myself I'd keep going. Just drive straight through. Don't look at the shoulder. Don't stop. But then I saw someone, a figure, standing on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just another driver who'd broken down. They were soaked, one arm raised like they were waving for help. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to keep driving, but I couldn't just leave someone out there in that storm. I slowed down, pulled to the shoulder. The wipers dragged across the glass, loud and slow. The rain made everything shimmer under the headlights. The figure stepped closer. He was tall, too tall maybe, and his clothes were completely drenched. His hair clung to his face, but through the water and shadows I thought I saw a familiar shape. Bare feet. I froze. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel, but then he leaned toward the window, hand pressed against the glass, and I caught a glimpse of his face, just enough to see he looked tired, pale, cold. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear him through the rain, but it looked like, "Please." And just like that, my guilt won. I unlocked the door. He opened it slowly, water dripping off his sleeves as he climbed inside. The smell hit first, wet dirt and something else underneath, something metallic and sweet. He didn't say a word, just sat there staring out the windshield as I pulled back onto the road. The silence was heavy. I could hear every breath, slow, deliberate, like each one took effort. After a minute, I said, "You all right, man? You out here alone?" He turned his head just enough that I could see his face better. His skin looked wrong, too smooth, like wax left in the sun. His lips moved, but his voice came out thin and uneven. "Car broke down." I nodded, forcing a small laugh. "Yeah, that happens a lot out here." He didn't respond. Just looked back at the window. I drove another few miles, trying not to stare, trying to convince myself I was just paranoid. But then I noticed something. His reflection in the glass. It wasn't matching his movements. When he turned his head, the reflection lagged. Like it didn't want to follow. I blinked, shook my head, told myself it was the rain, the light, anything but what it looked like. "You live around here?" I asked. He didn't answer at first. Then softly, "Used to." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I kept driving. The road stretched on forever, the fog thickening, swallowing the world outside. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "You've been here before." I looked over at him. "What?" He was staring at me now. Not angry, not even curious. Just watching, like he already knew what I'd say next. "You stopped once," he said. "By the trees." I felt the blood drain from my face. "How do you—" "Left me there," he said, voice calm, flat. "Left me in the dark." My throat went dry. "That's not possible." "You—" He smiled. Just barely. The headlights flickered. The radio hissed, static crawling through the speakers. I looked at the rearview mirror and froze. There was someone sitting in the back seat. I didn't see them get in. I didn't hear anything, but there they were. Another figure, pale, head tilted down, hands resting on their knees. Water dripping onto the seat. My heart started pounding. Who's that? The man beside me didn't answer. The person in the back slowly lifted their head. Their face was empty, blank, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, wet skin where features should have been. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded, tires screaming on the wet road. When we stopped, I turned to the passenger seat, empty. The door was closed. Rain hammered the windshield. My chest heaved as I looked in the mirror again. The back seat was empty, too. For a second, I thought maybe I'd blacked out. Maybe I'd imagined everything. Then I saw it. A single wet footprint on the dashboard. I started the car again, hands shaking. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just needed to get away from that road. The fog grew thicker, pressing against the glass. The further I drove, the more I realized I couldn't see the mile markers anymore. No lights, no signs. Just that endless gray and then movement. Something crossed the road ahead. I hit the brakes again, headlights cutting through the fog. There he was. The same man, standing in the middle of the road facing me. But this time, his skin looked darker, wet, torn like it was peeling away. His jaw hung loose, mouth stretching too wide. I backed up, heart racing, but when I looked behind me, the road was gone. Just fog. Endless, suffocating fog. I tried the phone again. Dead. No signal. Then I heard it. The back door click open, slow, quiet. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I felt the air change, the temperature drop, the smell of wet earth filling the car again, and then a whisper, close to my ear. Drive. I pressed the gas without thinking, tires spinning before catching grip. The fog seemed to open just enough for the road to appear again, and I drove faster than I ever have in my life. But no matter how far I went, I could still feel him there, behind me, breathing, watching. When I finally hit the intersection where the highway meets the main road, the fog vanished like it had never been there. The car was empty. The seats were dry. No footprints. No smell. Nothing. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty seat beside me. My heart still racing, my hands trembling on the wheel. It should have been over. But as I reached for the glove box to grab my phone charger, something caught my eye. A key, old rusted, sitting on the passenger seat. I didn't own a key like that, and scratched into the metal, barely visible, were 4 words. You gave me a ride. I threw it out the window, but that night, when I finally made it home, there it was, sitting on my kitchen counter, wet, cold, waiting. I don't drive at night anymore. I don't pick up anyone. I don't even stop for red lights if the road's empty, because sometimes when I close my eyes, I see him sitting beside me again, face dripping, eyes hollow, whispering in that voice that sounds more like wind than words. Drive. And when I wake up in the morning, the key is always there, right where I left it. It's strange the way the past finds you. Sometimes it's not through dreams or memories, but through something quiet, like a phone call that comes late at night, when you're half asleep and your body knows before your mind does that something's wrong. That's how it started for me. It was late spring, maybe 2 years ago. My cousin Mark called me just before dawn. He's a police officer out in a small rural county, a place where not much happens, or at least that's what he used to say. His voice sounded off, shaky, not tired but hollow. He just said, "You might want to stay away from the reservoir for a while." I asked him why. He didn't answer right away. I could hear the radio chatter in the background, muffled voices, static. Then he said, "They're draining it. We found something." That was all. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I didn't think much of it until later that afternoon, when the news broke. A teenage girl had been found at the bottom of the old reservoir, the one off Highway 37. The report said she'd gone missing over a month ago. People assumed she'd run away, maybe left town, but she hadn't gone anywhere. She was right there, under the water the whole time. Mark was one of the first officers on scene. He didn't talk about it for days, and when I finally saw him, he looked different, not just tired. Haunted, maybe. He'd always been this loud, confident guy, the kind who joked about everything. But that day, he couldn't even look me in the eye. He told me the story like he was trying to convince himself it actually happened. They'd been ordered to supervise a maintenance crew draining the reservoir after a long dry season. It was supposed to be routine. But as the water dropped, something strange floated to the surface, a shape that didn't belong there. At first, they thought it was an animal, but when it rolled closer to shore, they saw a hand. Mark said everyone froze. The workers backed off, one guy even puked. The smell hit next, that heavy, sour stench that sits low in your throat. He was the one who had to pull her out. The girl's body was tangled in weeds and fishing line, her skin gray, her hair fanned out like black moss. He said her eyes were open, or what was left of them, and she looked like she'd been staring up through that water the whole time, watching the world move on without her. He paused a long time before he told me the next part. When we rolled her over, he said, her mouth was full of gravel. Like someone forced it in, I didn't say anything. I didn't know what you could say to that. They called in detectives, divers, forensics, the whole department. Everyone thought it was a murder, but there was no sign of trauma, no broken bones, no ligature marks, nothing, just that mouthful of gravel. The weirdest part was the location. The reservoir wasn't deep, maybe 20 feet when full, and it hadn't been open to the public for years. There was a fence around it, locked gates, warning signs. The only people with keys were the county workers and the sheriff's office. So how did a 17-year-old girl end up there? Mark said they searched every inch of the drained bed. Mud, rocks, old tires. Nothing else. But when the divers went under the silt near the center, they found something strange. A patch of earth, perfectly smooth, not natural, like it had been packed down by hand, and under that, a second hole, narrow, about 6 feet deep. Empty. That's what got to him the most. The idea that someone had been down there before the water, digging, preparing. He said when he looked down into that hole, it didn't just feel empty. It felt wrong. Like the air didn't belong there. Like it had been trapped too long. The divers sealed it off, and the coroner took the body. But that night, after the scene cleared, Mark stayed behind. He said he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Not evidence, something else. So he walked back down toward the drained basin, flashlight in hand. The mud sucked at his boots, thick and cold. The air smelled like rust and rain, and then he saw it. A small ripple in the puddle where the body had been. Just one. The water had stopped moving hours ago, but there it was, a perfect circle spreading outward. He shone his light on it, and for a split second, he swore he saw bubbles rising, as if something was still underneath. Then nothing. The water went still again. He didn't tell anyone about that. Not his chief, not the other officers. Just me. He said it felt personal somehow. Like whoever that girl was, she wanted him to see it. After that, things got worse for him. He started having dreams. Said he'd wake up choking, coughing like his lungs were full of mud. His clothes would be damp in the morning, the sheets cold. One night, he called me again, his voice trembling. He said he saw her. He'd been driving home from a late shift, and just as he passed the reservoir, he noticed the gate was open. The chain was cut clean through, and there, standing on the slope of the empty basin, was a girl, not moving. Just standing there barefoot, staring up at his car lights. He stopped for a second, trying to convince himself it was a trick of the fog. But when he blinked, she was gone. He swore he could still see the waterline on her skin. After that, he took a leave of absence. Said he needed a break, but I knew better. He wasn't just tired. He was unraveling. I went out there myself a week later. The reservoir was dry. Cracked mud stretched out where water used to be. The air was still, too still. I walked along the edge just far enough to see the outline of where they'd found her, and I'll be honest, it felt like the ground was breathing. I told myself it was the wind, the way it moved through the cracks. But I could feel a pulse, slow and deep, beneath the surface. There was a plastic evidence tag still stuck in the dirt, half buried. I brushed it off. Number 14. That night when I got home, I found the same number written on my front step, in chalk. Mark swore he didn't do it. He doesn't talk about the reservoir anymore. None of them do. But every few months, someone else goes missing near that area. Hikers, drivers, people just passing through. The official reports say accidents, but it's too many to be coincidence. The water's back now. They filled it again after the investigation closed. But locals say it never looks right. Too dark, too still. Even in the heat of summer, mist hangs over it like it's trying to hide what's beneath. Mark quit the force last year. He moved 2 towns over, started working construction. He still won't drive near Highway 37. And sometimes, when he's had a few drinks, he tells me he hears dripping at night. He swears he wakes up to the sound of water running, not from the pipes, but from somewhere inside the walls. Last time I visited him, I heard it too. We were sitting in his kitchen, talking about nothing when I heard that faint trickle, like rain against glass. But it wasn't raining. He went quiet, eyes locked on the sink. The faucet was dry. The drain, empty. The sound was coming from the floorboards. He just said, "It's her." I didn't argue. I didn't want to. Because when I left his house that night, I noticed something in my car mirror, a shape, faint, moving near the edge of the road. It looked like a girl, her hair wet, her face turned away. And when my headlights hit her just right, I swear I saw the water shining in her open eyes, like she'd never left the reservoir. Like she was still waiting for someone to pull her out. You ever notice how water remembers? It keeps what it wants. Even when you drain it, clean it, fill it again, it never really forgets. After they found the girl, they buried her up on the hill behind St. Mary's. Small town, small funeral. No press, no cameras. Just family, a few officers, and a handful of curious people who showed up because tragedy is the only thing that ever stirs this place awake. I went with my cousin, Mark, the one who'd found her. He didn't speak much that morning. Didn't look anyone in the eye. I remember his hands shaking when the priest started reading. He didn't even notice he'd been digging his fingernails into his palms until I saw the blood. They buried her in a closed casket. The coroner said it was for the best. It should have ended there. A sad story, an unanswered mystery, a town that moves on. But it didn't. 2 nights after the funeral, Mark called me again. It was around midnight. I was half asleep when the phone rang and I almost didn't answer. But I did. He sounded out of breath, panicked. Said he was parked near the reservoir. He kept saying, "She's back." I asked what he meant. He said there was someone standing in the water. At first, I thought he was drunk, or having one of his nightmares again. But he swore she looked exactly the same soaked dress, the same long black hair, just standing there, half submerged, not moving. He said he turned his headlights on her and she didn't flinch, didn't blink. But the water around her, it started to move. Not like waves, like it was breathing. I told him to get out of there. He said he couldn't. He said the longer he looked, the less she looked like a person at all. Then the line went dead. I drove out there the next morning. The reservoir was calm, silent. The gate was chained again. But there were footprints, clear ones, in the mud near the water's edge. Small bare feet, leading into the water and none coming back out. When I told Mark what I'd seen, he just nodded. Said I told you. That week more people started talking. A fisherman said he saw a girl on the opposite bank before sunrise. Pale, hair dripping, face turned toward him. He shouted at her, but she just sank straight down. No splash. Just gone. Then there was the old couple who lived near the dam. They said they kept hearing knocking from their basement pipes at night. Soft, steady, rhythmic, like someone was tapping on the other side. They had their plumber check it. He said the pipes were dry. After that, people started avoiding the reservoir altogether. Mark tried to convince his department to reopen the case, but they wouldn't. Said grief was making him see things. Said maybe the water was playing tricks, but he couldn't let it go. One night he told me he'd gone back there again, alone. He said he needed to prove something, and to himself or maybe to her. He brought flowers, left them near the bank where he'd found her. He told me he sat there for an hour, just watching the water. It didn't move. He said he almost started to believe it was over. But then he heard it, a voice, quiet, bubbling through the air like it was carried by the current. It said his name. He said it once. Then again. Mark. And when he looked up, there were ripples forming, slow and wide, as if someone had just stepped in. He ran before he saw what came next. After that, he stopped sleeping altogether. Said every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, that same gray face, those open eyes. But worse than that was the sound. He said he could hear water running inside his head, like it was behind his eyes, sloshing with every heartbeat. I didn't know what to do for him. He quit his job officially after that. Tried to move in with me for a while. Said the quiet in his house made it worse. He'd wake up at 3 a.m. gasping, drenched in sweat, and I'd find puddles under his bed. Not big ones, just enough to make the carpet dark. He swore he wasn't spilling anything. One morning, I found him sitting in the shower with the water off, staring at the drain. He said he thought he saw a hand reach up through it. He laughed after he said it, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that feels human. It was hollow, broken. The next week, it wasn't just Mark seeing her. A group of teenagers said they spotted her by the road, the same stretch near the reservoir. They said she was standing in the ditch, her dress soaked, her head tilted to one side like she was listening for something. They told everyone at school the same story. When they passed her, their radios cut out. Every single one. The static didn't stop until they were miles away. Then there was the deputy who swore he saw her reflection in his rearview mirror while patrolling the highway. Not behind him. Inside the mirror. Floating there, upside down, hair hanging like it was underwater. He took leave 2 days later. Everyone connected to the case started breaking down, one by one. The coroner was found sleeping in his office, papers soaked. Said he didn't remember spilling anything. The pastor from her funeral left town. Even the diver who helped retrieve the body called Mark one night, crying. Said he kept dreaming of sinking. No one wanted to say it out loud, but we all thought the same thing. She came back. Not to haunt the town. Not for revenge, but because the water gave her back wrong, like it let her go, but not all the way. It was about a month later when I saw her myself. I was driving home, cutting through the fog near Highway 37. It was raining, light, steady, the kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller. As I came around the bend near the reservoir, I saw her. At first, just a shape. A woman, standing ankle-deep in the runoff water by the shoulder. Her hair stuck to her face. Her arms hung loose. Her skin, it wasn't pale like a ghost. It was gray, heavy, soaked. I slowed down, rolled my window halfway down and called out. She didn't move. Then, she turned her head and I realized her mouth was open, but she wasn't breathing. She was leaking. Water was dripping from her lips, steady, like she was still drowning. I froze. I couldn't even hit the gas, and then she smiled. Not wide, just enough for the water to spill faster, trickling down her chin like rain. When I blinked, she was gone. I drove home shaking. My hands wouldn't stop. I didn't tell Mark that night. I didn't want to make it worse for him, but I think she knew. The next morning he showed up at my door soaking wet, even though it hadn't rained. His shoes squished when he walked. He didn't say a word. Just sat down and started crying. When he finally looked at me, I swear I saw it, her reflection in his eyes. Like she was standing behind him, watching me through him. I blinked, and it was gone. He said, "She's following me. Not in the water anymore. Everywhere." That was the last time I saw him. 2 days later, his truck was found on the bridge near the reservoir. Engine running, driver's door open. They said he jumped, but they never found the body. And 3 days after that, the reservoir started to drain again. No one opened the gates this time. It just started sinking. The water line dropped overnight. People said it was a leak. Others said it was something underneath, pulling it down. They closed the area again, and sometimes, late at night, I'd drive out there. I park by the gate and listen. You can hear it if you sit long enough, not the frogs, not the wind. Something moving under the water. Slow, heavy, like breath. And if the moon's bright enough, you can see her standing near the middle, just beneath the surface, her face turned upward, waiting. Not for help this time, for someone else to take her place. You ever notice how every good deal has a reason behind it? Like when something's too cheap to make sense. It usually means someone wanted it gone. That's how we ended up with the house. It was my wife, Angela, who found the listing. A 2-story farmhouse just off Highway 37. White paint, big yard, wide porch, the kind of place that looks peaceful from a distance. The price was the first red flag. $80,000 for a house twice that size. She called it a fresh start. I called it what it was, a trap with good lighting. Still, we bought it. We'd been scraping by in a cramped apartment, both of us tired of hearing the neighbors through the walls. She wanted quiet. I wanted space, and for a while it felt like maybe we'd made the right call. The first day everything looked fine. The air smelled clean. The floors creaked in a way that felt old but safe. The realtor, some middle-aged guy with a forced smile, handed us the keys and said, "She's got history, this one." I asked what that meant. He hesitated. Said, "Oh, you know, every old house does." That was the second red flag. The third came a few hours later, when I found the newspaper clippings stuffed behind a drawer in the kitchen. They were yellowed, folded, almost brittle. Headlines from the late 90s, local girl still missing. Police continue search near Highway 37. Family home abandoned after investigation. There was a photo, too, blurry, black and white. A girl, maybe 16, smiling awkwardly beside the same porch I was standing on. I showed Angela, but she brushed it off. Said it was probably nothing. Said it didn't matter who used to live here. But it did. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house had this hum. Not loud, not mechanical, as more like breathing. The walls seemed to expand with the dark, like the house was alive. Around midnight, I went downstairs for water. That's when I saw it. The basement door was open. We hadn't gone down there yet. We didn't even have the key. The realtor said the lock was rusted shut. But it was open now, cracked just enough to show blackness beyond. I stood there for a while, just staring. Then I heard it. A faint sound from below. It wasn't a voice. Not really, more like the echo of one. A single word, stretched and broken. "Help!" I slammed the door shut. The next morning, I told Angela, but she laughed. Said it was the wind. Said maybe the house was settling. She wanted to make breakfast. I wanted to leave, but she looked happy. Brighter than I'd seen her in months. So I stayed quiet. The day went normal enough. We unpacked boxes, cleaned dust off old shelves, tried to make it feel like home. It almost worked, until she found the crawl space. It was hidden behind the laundry room wall, a small door, nailed shut and painted over. She noticed the outline when she was moving the dryer. We pried it open with a hammer. The air that came out smelled like dirt and iron. Inside was a narrow tunnel, barely big enough to crawl through. The floor was packed with old blankets, empty water bottles, and what looked like children's toys. Melted, deformed, half buried in the dust, Angela said. Probably homeless squatters. But there was something else down there. A photo. It was stuck in the dirt, edges warped by dampness. When I pulled it out, my stomach turned. It was the same girl from the newspaper. Only this time she wasn't smiling. She was standing in the basement, in front of a cracked cement wall, her eyes wide, her mouth open like she was mid-scream. Someone had drawn over the photo in red marker, a circle around her face, with one word written beside it, found. Angela said we should throw it away. I said we should burn it. We did neither. That night, I heard footsteps again, slow, dragging ones. From the hall, then the stairs. I got up, opened the door, nothing. Just darkness. Then, something whispered, right beside my ear. It sounded like breathing turned into a word, like someone saying my name. But underwater, I spun around, and for a split second, I thought I saw her, a figure standing at the end of the hallway, her head tilted, her arms hanging loose. The lights flickered once, then she was gone. Angela didn't see her. She said I was overworked, but over the next few days she changed too. She stopped going outside, stopped opening the curtains. I'd find her staring at the basement door, her lips moving like she was counting. Once, I heard her talking softly to someone, a low voice, steady, calm. When I asked who she was talking to, she said, "She's lonely." I didn't ask again. 3 days later, the power went out. I went to the breaker in the basement, my first time down there. The air was heavy, damp. The floor was covered in old newspapers, warped with age, and then, on the far wall, I saw it. A set of marks carved deep into the concrete. Fingernail scratches, hundreds of them. At the center, someone had written 3 words, "Don't let her out." I ran upstairs. Angela was standing by the crawlspace door again, her hand on the frame. I shouted for her to move away, but she didn't even look up. Her voice was quiet. "She wants to show me something." Then the door swung open on its own. I grabbed her, pulled her back. The air that came out was freezing, thick with that same iron smell. Something moved inside, slow, wet, like something dragging itself closer. I slammed it shut, nailed it closed again. We left the house that night. Didn't even pack. Just drove. Angela didn't speak the whole drive back to town. She kept rubbing her wrists like she was trying to wash something off. The realtor didn't answer my calls. When I finally reached him a week later, his tone was flat like he'd expected this. He said, "You should have never gone into the basement." Then he hung up. I looked up the house again, this time digging deeper. It had been sold 6 times in the last 20 years. Every single family left within 6 months. One filed a missing person report, their son aged 10, never found. When I showed Angela, she said she didn't remember any of it. Said she didn't remember the house, the photo, the tunnel. But last night, I woke up to the sound of water dripping, and when I went to check, I saw her standing at the window, staring out into the dark. I asked what she was looking at. She said, "She's outside." I looked, but there was nothing. Just the empty road, a faint shimmer of fog rolling across it. Then, in the distance, a shape, standing at the end of the driveway, still, watching. Angela smiled, and I swear, when the lightning flashed, I saw her reflection in the glass, but it wasn't her face. It was the girl's. I used to think that houses only felt heavy when something bad happened inside them. Like memories had weight, like they soaked into the walls, but that house on Highway 37, it was different. It didn't just hold bad memories. It fed on them. After that night with the crawl space, Angela tried to pretend things were normal. She said we overreacted, that we imagined it. She even laughed a little. But she didn't sleep much after that. Neither did I. The house had gone quiet. Too quiet. No creaks, no hums, no wind through the windows. Just stillness, like it was waiting for us to forget. A week passed before we found the floorboards. It started with a smell. Faint at first, then stronger every day. A sour, metallic scent that clung to the air. Angela blamed the pipes. I thought maybe a dead animal under the floor. But when we tore up the old carpet in the living room, the truth was worse. Underneath, the wood was warped, dark, sticky in some places, as if something had seeped through and dried there decades ago. At first I thought it was old paint, but then the smell hit me again. Iron, rot, blood. Angela stared at it for a long time, then said softly, "It's probably from when they slaughtered animals here." But this wasn't a farmhouse. And those stains, they had shape. They weren't random. They formed a small pool about the size of a body. I told her to step back. I didn't want her near it. But she crouched down anyway, tracing the outline with her finger. She said, "It's sticky." I pulled her hand away, maybe too roughly. She looked at me, not scared, not angry, just distant. Like she wasn't really there anymore. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What kind of blood could stay visible after so many years? How many layers of carpet polish and paint had hidden it before we came along? I sat up late, scrolling through old forums, old news archives. The missing girl from the newspaper. The one from the crawl space. Her name was Rachel Lynn. She disappeared in 1998. Last. Seen walking home from a friend's house just a few miles from Highway 37. No, one ever found her body. But one of the articles mentioned something strange. Blood evidence discovered in a residence off Highway 37. Family moved out shortly after questioning. Our address. When I told Angela, she didn't react. She just stared at the window and said, "It's not ours, so it's not our problem." But that night, something started tapping. It came from under the floor. Slow, rhythmic, like knuckles against wood. I followed the sound to the living room, the spot where the stains were. The tapping stopped the second I stepped closer. I stood there for a long time, holding my breath. Then the boards creaked, just once, like something shifting below me. I almost tore the whole floor open that night, but I didn't. I told myself it was pipes again, or old wood settling, because the truth was worse. The truth was that something down there was moving. The next morning, I woke up to find Angela sitting on the floor, right on top of the stains. She had the carpet knife in her hand, and she was scraping at the wood, peeling away the dark polish layer by layer. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "It's coming through again." I told her to stop. She didn't. She kept scraping until I grabbed her wrists. That's when I noticed her hands. Her nails were packed with splinters, and the tips of her fingers were red. She said she didn't feel it. I took the knife away, and that's when I saw what she'd uncovered. The stains weren't just on the surface. They went deep. So deep, it looked like the wood itself had absorbed the blood, like it was part of the grain. That's when I noticed the small gap between two boards. Something was glinting there. I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, wedged between the joists, was a small silver locket, old, tarnished, the chain broken. Angela leaned close as I opened it. Inside was a picture, a young girl with pale hair and wide eyes. The same face from the newspaper, the same girl from the crawlspace photo. But on the other side of the locket was something else, a faded engraving. It said, "You'll always come back." Angela whispered it under her breath, like she'd heard it before. Then she stood up and walked out of the room without another word. That night, I tried to sleep in the car. I couldn't stay inside that house another second. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to see Angela standing outside the porch, barefoot in the cold, looking down at the ground. The porch light flickered above her. I got out, called her name. She didn't move. When I got closer, I saw what she was staring at. Dark smudges leading from the front door to the grass. Footprints, bare, small. They led back toward the house. When I looked down again, Angela's feet were clean. No mud, no stains, nothing. I walked her back inside. She said she didn't remember going out there. When she sat down, I noticed something on her wrist, a faint reddish mark, a handprint. I didn't say anything. I just turned all the lights on and sat there until sunrise. The next morning, I decided to pull up the entire section of the stained floor. Angela begged me not to, said the house would get angry. I told her it was wood, not a living thing. I was wrong. When I pried up the last board, the air changed. The smell of iron hit me so hard I almost gagged. Underneath the planks was a shallow cavity, packed with dirt, dust, and something else. Fabric. I reached down and pulled. It was a sleeve, then a bit of hair, then bone. I froze. The remains were small, child-sized, and they'd been there a long time. Angela started screaming. Not words, just this raw, broken sound that didn't sound like her. I dropped the board and stumbled back. She fell to her knees beside the hole, staring down into it. Then she whispered. She said she wanted to be found. I called the police, of course. They came, sealed the area, started asking questions. When they left, one of the officers, a young guy, quiet, pulled me aside and said, "You're not the first owners to find bones here. They said they cleared it out years ago." I didn't understand what he meant. How could there be more? That night we stayed in a motel. Angela didn't sleep. She just kept saying, "She's not done." I didn't believe her. Not until the next morning, when we went back to grab a few things. The boards I'd pulled up were nailed back down. The stains were darker now, fresh. And there, in the middle of the room, was the locket, cleaned, shining, open. It wasn't where I left it. Inside was a new picture. Angela, sitting on the floor, smiling. People always talk about small towns like they're peaceful, quiet, safe. The kind of place where everyone knows your name and waves when you drive by. But Highway 37 wasn't like that. Not anymore. After what happened with the floorboards, Angela and I became unwelcome. Not openly. Not at first. It was in the looks. The sudden silences when we walked into the diner. The way people turned away when I asked questions. We'd only been in that house for a few weeks. But it felt like the whole town already knew something we didn't. Something they weren't supposed to say. The first person to actually talk was Mrs. Ketter. She lived across the road. Old, thin, always sitting on her porch like she'd been waiting for someone. She used to wave at us before. After the police came, she stopped, until one night I was taking the trash out and she called my name. I didn't even know she knew it. Her voice cracked when she said, "You shouldn't stay there." I asked why. She didn't answer right away. She just looked past me, at the house, then back at me again, like she was checking if I was still myself. Finally, she said, "You bought a grave." I thought she was talking about the body under the floor. I told her the police handled it, that they were still investigating. But she shook her head. "No," she said. "Not that one." "The others?" I asked, "What others?" She just stood up and went back inside. When I told Angela, she didn't say much. She'd stopped talking about the house altogether. She just stared at the walls most nights, like she was listening for something. Sometimes I caught her mouthing words under her breath, things I couldn't hear. The next morning, a note showed up under our door. No name, no handwriting I recognized. Just one sentence. "Ask about the Millers." At first, I didn't think much of it. But later that day, I went into town for groceries and overheard two old men talking outside the hardware store. One of them said, "That place again. Should have burned it down after the Millers." I stopped. Asked what they meant. They looked at me like I'd said something dirty. Then one of them, the taller guy, said, "You're the one who bought it?" I nodded. He sighed and said, "Son, you can't fix a place like that. You don't paint over rot." Then he walked away. The other one stayed, though. He lowered his voice and said, "The Millers moved in back in '05. Nice folks. 2 kids. Lasted 4 months." I asked what happened. He hesitated, then said, "They said the house took them." That was the first time I heard that word. Took. Not killed, not disappeared. Took. When I pressed him, he said no one ever found them. All the furniture was still there. The car in the driveway. Dinner on the table. Just gone. He told me the sheriff at the time sealed the place up, said it was a gas leak or carbon monoxide, something that made people hallucinate. But the truth, he said, was stranger. Because neighbors had seen lights in the windows weeks after the Millers vanished. And sometimes, voices. I asked if anyone ever went inside. He said one did, a man named Rourke, a hunter who lived 2 houses down. Went in on a dare. Never came back out. When I got home that night, Angela was standing in the living room again. Right over the stains. The boards we'd pulled up were nailed back down, clean and polished now. I asked if she'd done it. She said, "It looked better this way." Her voice didn't sound like hers. It was softer, slower. I tried to laugh it off. Told her we should take a break, maybe stay somewhere else for a while. She smiled, this small, tight smile, and said, "You can go if you want." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the neighbor's porch light across the road flicker in and out. Sometime after midnight, I saw someone standing in our yard. It wasn't Angela. She was asleep on the couch. This figure was taller, still, facing the house. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. But when I got there, no one was around. Just the sound of crickets and the highway hum in the distance. Then I looked down. In the dirt, near the porch, were 2 sets of footprints. One coming toward the house. The other, smaller, bare, leading away. The next morning, I went back to see Mrs. Ketter. She didn't come out when I knocked. So I shouted through the screen door, asking what she meant about the Millers. After a long pause, her voice came from somewhere inside the dark house. "Did you see the boy yet?" I froze. "What boy?" I asked. "The one that knocks," she said. "He comes first. Always comes first." I backed away. I didn't want to hear any more. That night, Angela woke me up around 3 a.m. She said there was someone at the door. I listened. Soft knocking. 3 taps. Then silence. Then again. 3 taps. I told her not to answer it. But she was already walking down the hall. By the time I caught up, she was standing at the front door, her hand on the knob. I whispered her name, but she didn't turn around. Then, from the other side of the door, a small voice said, "It's cold out here." A child's voice. Angela started to turn the handle, and I yelled, "Don't!" She froze. The voice stopped. After a few seconds, I yanked her back and opened the door myself, but there was no one there. Just empty air. I checked the porch, the yard, the road. Nothing. But when I looked down again, the dirt was wet, like something had just been standing there. The next morning, the police came by. Apparently, someone reported a child missing from 2 streets over. A little boy, 7 years old, the same night. The same hour, the officer asked if we'd seen anything strange. I told him no, because what was I supposed to say? That a ghost knocked on our door? He looked at the house before leaving and said, "Don't stay here long. People who do, don't stay right." When he drove off, I noticed something sticking out from under our welcome mat. A photograph, black and white, old, the Millers, all 4 of them. And in the background, in the window behind them, was a shape. Something long, thin, like someone watching from inside the house. That night, I tried to confront Angela. Told her we needed to leave for good. She just smiled again. "We can't," she said. "We haven't been invited to." I didn't understand what that meant. Until I checked her phone later. There were messages, dozens of them, all to one number with no name. Each message said the same thing. "We're still here." And the last one she sent, around the same time as the knocking, had a reply. It said, "Good. We remember you." The next morning, I woke up alone. Angela's side of the bed was cold. I searched the whole house. Nothing. I ran across the road to Mrs. Ketter's. She was already on her porch. She didn't look surprised to see me. "She's with them now," she said. I demanded to know who she meant. She just pointed at the house and whispered, "The ones who were taken. They always want more company." I ran back, kicked the door open, and for a moment I thought I saw movement in the living room. A shadow at the edge of the light. Then faintly the sound of 3 soft knocks from inside. I turned slowly toward the floor. The boards were breathing, rising and falling, like the house itself was alive. And in the cracks between them, something wet was seeping through. Blood. Then, just above the sound of the wood groaning, I heard a whisper. It wasn't Angela. It was smaller, younger. It said, "Can I come in?" When people talk about haunted houses, they always mention the attic, the mirrors, the cold spots, but nobody ever talks about the basement. Maybe that's because what's buried beneath a house isn't supposed to be found. After Angela disappeared, I stayed in that house for 3 more days. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't leave. Every time I packed my bags, something stopped me. A sound, a flicker, a faint voice that sounded just enough like hers to make me stay a little longer. By the 3rd night, I wasn't sleeping. I sat on the living room floor with a flashlight and a mug of cold coffee, staring at the boards where the stains used to be. The police had sealed off the room for a while, but released it when nothing suspicious turned up. They didn't hear what I heard. They didn't feel the house breathing. It was around midnight when I noticed something strange. A draft, cold, steady, coming from under the stairs. I moved a few boxes and found a section of wall that sounded hollow when I tapped it. Behind it was a small, square panel, old, painted over a dozen times. I pried it open. Inside was a narrow stairwell going down. No light. Just air so damp it stung my throat. I should have stopped there. I told myself I'd just look for a second, just see where it led. But curiosity's a funny thing. It always wins. even when it shouldn't. I went down. The steps creaked under my weight. The deeper I went, the colder it got. By the time I reached the bottom, I couldn't hear the wind outside anymore, just the sound of dripping water somewhere in the dark. I flicked my flashlight on. It was a room, small square made of concrete, and on every wall there were words. At first I thought it was graffiti, but when I looked closer I realized the letters weren't written. They were scratched. Hundreds of them, some deep, some faint, all done by hand. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling. The first message I read said, "Don't listen when they knock." The next one, "She comes through the floor." My light shook. My hands were cold and slick with sweat. There were names, too, dozens of them, carved in crooked lines, sometimes overlapping. Rachel Lynn, Thomas Miller, Abigail Miller, Daniel Rourke, Angela Reed, my cousin's name. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, its beam sweeping over something in the corner, a small, rusted bed frame. Chains on the wall, and below that, a pile of photographs, old Polaroids. Faded with age, some water damaged. They showed families, people smiling in front of the same house, ours, but each picture had something strange in it. In the background, near the windows, there was always a shape, a tall, thin blur, sometimes near the door, sometimes by the stairs, always watching. I picked one up, the Millers. Their kids were grinning, their dog in front, and in the far corner of the picture, almost blending into the shadow, a woman. Her face was pale, eyes too wide. Her mouth wrong, like it had been drawn in after the photo was taken. I dropped it. Something moved behind me, just a small sound, like nails scraping against stone. I turned the light toward the far wall. The scratches there were newer, darker, fresher. The words were jagged, uneven. "It's in the walls now." Then another right beside it. "It learns your voice." I don't know why, but I whispered, "Who's there?" Something answered. Not in words, yeah, more like a breath. A soft exhale, inches from my ear, and then tapping. 3 knocks, slow, measured, from behind the wall. I backed away, my light flickering. The knocking followed. Each step I took, it came closer, through the concrete, like it was crawling just beneath the surface. Then one last scratch, right in front of me. I actually watched, as a thin crack split open across the wall. And through that crack, a sound came out. A voice. It wasn't Angela's, it wasn't human either. It sounded like a recording played backward, warped and low. But underneath it, I could almost make out words. "You opened it." The flashlight went out. I don't remember dropping it. I don't remember running up the stairs. All I remember is the cold. That biting cold that followed me all the way up. And when I finally burst into the living room, the air was heavy. Still, the walls were whispering. Not loudly, just faint enough to make me doubt it. Like distant echoes repeating words I couldn't quite hear. When I turned toward the window, I saw movement. Not outside, in the reflection. Behind me, something shifted. A shadow, tall and thin, rising from the floor like smoke. It didn't have a face, just the idea of one. Eyes where eyes should be, but hollow. It leaned close, almost close enough to touch, and I heard Angela's voice say, "You found it." I blinked, and it was gone. The next thing I remember, it was morning. I was on the couch, my clothes damp, my flashlight beside me. The hatch under the stairs was shut tight. The boxes were back in place. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it, until I saw the dirt on my shoes, and my hands uncovered in small cuts. Tiny splinters of concrete embedded in the skin. I went to the police again. They didn't even take notes this time. One of them said, "If you're having trouble adjusting, we can recommend someone to talk to." I wanted to scream. Instead, I went home and decided I'd prove it. I'd show them the room. I tore open the hatch again. The air came rushing out, thick, warm this time, like breath. But when I looked inside, there were no stairs. Just a wall of solid concrete. No basement. No door. Nothing. I tried hitting it, scraping it, listening for a hollow sound. There was none. It was like it had never existed. I sat on the floor for hours trying to understand. And that's when I saw it. A new message. freshly scratched into the wood beside me. You should have stayed down there. The marks were still wet, the shavings of wood curled at my feet, and the smell, iron, the same as before. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept hearing the sound, faint scratching somewhere beneath the floorboards. It went on for hours, steady and patient, like something trying to spell another message one letter at a time. Around 4 a.m., I finally couldn't take it. I yelled, "What do you want?" Everything went silent. Then, after a few seconds, the voice came again. This time, clear. To be remembered. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Because I realized something then, something that made my stomach twist. Every name I saw carved on that basement wall. They weren't warnings. They were signatures. And mine hadn't been there yet. Until now. There are things you can explain. And then there are things you just have to live with. What happened that winter on Highway 37 is one of those things. It was supposed to be a short hike. 2 days, maybe 3. Just me, my friends Mark and Leah, and a stretch of forest nobody really used anymore. The kind of place that felt untouched, like it had been waiting for us. We left our cars at the turnout near mile marker 42, where the road curves along the ridge. The sign was half buried in snow, the air thin and clean. Everything was so still that day, like the world was holding its breath. Leah laughed as she pulled on her gloves, said something about how quiet it was. Mark just grinned and said, "It's the snow. It kills sound." He was right. Every step we took sank deep, soft, and muffled. Even our voices felt smaller out there. The first day was easy. We followed the marked trail up toward the tree line, pitched our tent near a frozen creek, and made a small fire. The forest looked silver under the moonlight, beautiful, empty, peaceful. That night, I remember waking up once to pee and noticing something strange. The snow outside the tent wasn't smooth anymore. There were footprints, not ours. These were fresh, pressed deep, leading away from the fire and into the trees. At first, I thought maybe Mark had gone out. But when I unzipped the tent, he was there. So was Leah, both asleep. I stood there holding my breath, listening. There was nothing but the faint hiss of wind. The prints were spaced close together, like whoever made them was walking slowly. Barefoot. That's what made me freeze. There were no boot treads, no shoe edges. Just toes, human toes. I told myself it was probably some weird trick of the snow, maybe an animal track that melted funny, but deep down I already knew it wasn't. I went back inside, zipped the tent shut, and stayed awake until dawn. When we woke up, I didn't mention it. I told myself I'd just imagined the whole thing. We packed up and kept hiking. By midday, the weather turned. The sky darkened fast, the kind of gray that feels like it's pressing down on you. Wind came in off the ridge, carrying a sharp cold that bit through our clothes. We decided to head back early. It wasn't worth getting caught in a snowstorm. We turned around, following our own trail back toward the road. That's when we realized there were 4 sets of footprints now, ours, and one more. It followed right behind us, sometimes close enough that it almost blended with Mark's steps. I stopped, pointed it out. Mark crouched down to look, frowned. "Maybe someone else came through," he said. Leah shook her head. "We didn't see anyone. We hadn't. There hadn't been another car at the turnout. No cabins, no signs of life. Just us." The 4th trail veered off after a while, just a few yards into the trees, then circled back to join ours again, like it was watching. By late afternoon, the snow picked up hard. The wind howled through the trees and visibility dropped to almost nothing. We were moving slower now, heads down, faces numb. And that's when it happened. Mark was walking ahead, maybe 10 feet in front of us. I looked down for just a second to adjust my glove, and when I looked up again, he was gone. Just gone. No sound, no shout, no sign of struggle. Leah screamed his name, but it was swallowed by the wind. We ran to where he'd been. His footprints ended right there in the snow. Then 5 feet ahead, another set began, bare feet again, leading away, deeper into the forest, and beside them, one last partial print that looked like it belonged to Mark. Half a heel, then nothing, like he'd stepped once and vanished. We followed the trail for maybe 100 yards before Leah stopped. She was crying, saying we should go back, that we'd lose each other if we kept going. But I couldn't leave him. I kept walking, calling his name, following those prints. The snow got thicker. The trees pressed closer. And slowly, the footprints changed. They started small, almost like a child's, and the gaps between them grew shorter. Then longer again. Then shorter, like whoever, whatever, was making them didn't quite remember how to walk. At one point, I swear I saw movement ahead. A shape between the trees. Tall, dark, still. When I blinked, it was gone. Then I heard it. A voice. Mark's voice. He was calling my name, but it wasn't coming from ahead. It was coming from everywhere. The echo bounced between the trees, soft and flat, like it was being played back through something broken. Jason. I spun around, shouting for him. My flashlight beam caught the snow as it fell, thick and white. But there was no one there. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. Cold, heavy. I turned so fast I almost slipped, but no one was there, only the snow, and behind me. New footprints, closer this time. I ran. Branches whipped my face, my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I saw the flicker of Leah's headlamp through the trees. When I reached her, she was on her knees, shaking. She pointed past me, her face pale, lips blue. I turned and saw it too. Something moving through the storm. Tall, thin, its skin almost the color of the snow. It walked slowly, barefoot, dragging one arm behind it. Even from a distance, I could tell it wasn't human. The proportions were wrong, and the way it moved, too fluid, too deliberate. It looked like it was wearing a body, not living in one. Leah grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "It's following the prints." We ran until the forest thinned and the outline of the highway came into view. The last thing I heard before we reached the road was the sound of footsteps behind us, but not running, just walking, steady, patient. When we finally reached the turnout, our cars were covered in snow. We jumped inside mine, shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. Leah was crying, saying we had to go back for Mark. But when I looked out at the trailhead, the fourth set of footprints was already gone. Snow had swallowed them completely. We drove until we hit the next town, found a ranger station, and tried to explain what happened. They sent out a search team the next morning. They found our campsite. They found the trail, but no footprints, not even ours. They said it must have snowed over everything during the night. But when they reached the spot where we lost Mark, they found something else, half buried in the snow, a torn piece of fabric from his jacket. And under it, pressed deep into the ice, a footprint, bare. The rangers said it was probably just distorted boot tread, but they didn't see what I saw. The shape of toes, the smooth arch, the small smear where the heel had dragged. Leah stopped speaking to me after that. She moved out of town a few weeks later. I still see her sometimes online. New pictures, new city, new life. But every winter when the snow comes, she deactivates everything. And me, I moved away too. Tried to start over. But no matter where I go, it follows. Every year after the first snowfall, I find them. Outside my window, bare footprints in the snow, leading up to my door. Stopping just short of the threshold, and sometimes when I can't sleep, I swear I hear it. Mark's voice. Soft, close, almost gentle. Jason. Like he's standing right outside, waiting for me to open the door. People think the forest is quiet at night. It isn't. It breathes, it creaks, sighs and hums with things that only come alive when the dark settles in. You start to notice it after the sun dips below the ridge, how sound changes shape. It bends around you, turns soft and slow, until every crack in the firewood sounds like footsteps. That night, after Mark vanished, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep walking, keep searching, keep doing something, anything, so I wouldn't have to think about what I'd just seen. But Leah couldn't take another step. She was pale, trembling, saying we needed to rest, that we'd die out here if we didn't. So we found a flat patch between the trees and made camp. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The silence between us was heavy enough to fill the air. I built a fire, more out of instinct than anything. The snow was still falling lightly, just enough to blur the edges of the forest. Leah sat wrapped in her blanket, staring into the flames. She hadn't taken her eyes off them since we stopped. Every few minutes, she'd whisper his name, like she couldn't help it. Mark? Just that. Over and over, I wanted to tell her to stop, but I didn't. Because deep down, I wanted him to answer too. We stayed like that for a long time. The woods around us were still, almost too still. No wind, no cracking branches, not even the rustle of snow falling from the pines. It was like the forest was listening. At one point, Leah asked, "You think they'll find him?" Her voice was small, hopeful, like a child asking for comfort. I didn't know what to say. I lied. "Yeah, they'll find him. Maybe he got turned around in the storm." She nodded slowly, her eyes unfocused. "He wouldn't leave us." "Not like that," I didn't answer, because I'd seen the footprints, and I knew whatever took Mark wasn't something he followed willingly. By midnight, the fire had burned low, the last pieces of wood snapping and curling into embers. I tried to sleep, but every sound made my body lock up. The forest has a way of reminding you how small you are. Every gust of wind feels like it's whispering something just out of reach. Leah eventually drifted off beside me. Her breathing steadied. The fire crackled softly, and then I heard it. "Jason?" It came from the trees. At first I thought I imagined it. The way sound bounces in the woods, it could have been anything. A trick of the wind, my own name echoing in my head. But then it came again. "Jason!" Clear this time. Familiar. Mark's voice. I sat up so fast my sleeping bag twisted around me. The firelight barely reached beyond the first row of trees, but I could see movement between them. A shadow shifting slowly from one trunk to another. "Mark?" I whispered. Leah stirred beside me, confused. The voice came again, closer now. "Jason, it's me." Leah sat up, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. My throat was dry. It sounded exactly like him. Same tone, same rhythm, even the way he used to stretch my name when he was tired. But something about it was wrong. Too smooth, too steady, like it was replaying him. I grabbed my flashlight, aimed it toward the trees, and called out, "Mark! Where are you?" The beam cut through the falling snow, white flakes flashing in the air like dust in a spotlight. Nothing moved. Then, a flicker of color, a jacket, blue, the same one Mark was wearing. He was standing just beyond the edge of the light. I couldn't see his face, but I could see the outline of his body. The way his arms hung too still, too low. Leah started crying, whispering, "Oh my God, he's alive." I started toward him, and then he spoke again. "Jason." Only it didn't come from in front of me this time. It came from behind. I spun around, and for a second I didn't understand what I was seeing. There was no one there, just the firelight, the tent, Leah trembling beside me. But the voice, it kept coming. Over and over, circling us. "Yabo, Jason."
"Leah."
"Help me." Each time it sounded like it was moving, around us, through us, between us. Leah grabbed my arm. "It's in the trees." I wanted to tell her to stay quiet, but before I could, the voice called out again. Closer than before, so close it sounded like it was whispering right into my ear. "Jason, why'd you leave me?" I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Leah screamed. I turned back toward the light, and the thing in the trees stepped forward, not fully into the firelight, but just enough that I could see the shape of its face. It looked like him. For half a second, my brain wanted to believe it was him, Mark, cold, scared, exhausted. But his head tilted wrong, too far to one side, like it didn't understand the movement. His mouth hung open, and when he spoke again, the words didn't match the shape of his lips. "Help me." The sound didn't even come from his throat. It came from everywhere at once. The air, the trees, the snow. I lifted the flashlight higher. My hand was shaking. That's when I saw it. His eyes. They weren't eyes anymore, just pale circles reflecting the light like glass. And his clothes. They weren't wet or torn. They were perfect. Too perfect. like someone had dressed him in them. Leah backed away, whispering, "It's not him, Jason. It's not him." The thing tilted its head the other way, slow and creaking like wood bending. Then it took one step closer. The sound it made. It wasn't footsteps. It was like ice cracking under pressure. I don't remember deciding to run. I just grabbed Leah's arm, pulled her toward the fire, and threw the last unburned log into the flames. The thing stopped. It stood there at the edge of the light, its face twitching, melting in and out of focus like a bad reflection in water. Then it spoke again. But this time, it didn't sound like Mark. It sounded like me, my own voice echoing back at me, "Jason." I don't know how long we sat there. Minutes, maybe hours, watching it shift just beyond the light. Sometimes it looked like Mark, sometimes like me, sometimes like something in between. Eventually it stopped moving, just froze, half hidden in the trees, until the fire burned low again. And then, slowly, it sank down, not like it fell, like it melted into the snow. By dawn, it was gone. No tracks, no sign of anything. Just the tree line, calm and quiet again. Leah didn't say a word. She just stared at the spot where it had stood, her lips moving soundlessly. When we finally packed up and started back toward the road, she asked me one question. "Do you think it's still out there?" I didn't answer her, because I already knew. That thing hadn't come from the forest. It had come from him, and I think it's still wearing him. They said they were only going to search one more day. By then, the blizzard had rolled down from the ridge, and the snow had already buried half the markers we'd placed along the path. Most people would have given up by that point, said it was hopeless. But not Leah. She wouldn't stop looking for him. Not after what we saw that night. The forest was quieter now. Too quiet. Like the storm had frozen the world in place. We walked the same trail the rangers had cleared earlier, following the flags nailed to trees. There were 6 of us, 2 officers, 3 volunteers, and me. I kept my flashlight low, close to the snow. The prints from that night were gone, but I couldn't shake the memory of how they'd looked, how they stopped halfway into the woods. The others tried to talk, but it all felt wrong, forced. Every sound echoed like it didn't belong here. One of the officers, a tall guy named Burke, said, "This'll be the last sweep. If he wandered off, he's not making it through this cold." Leah turned and glared at him. "Don't say that," he sighed. "Ma'am, I'm just being honest." But she ignored him and kept walking. We followed the ridge until we came to a narrow clearing, a place where the snow was thinner, as if the wind had swept it clean. That's where Burke stopped. "Hold up," he said, raising a hand. At first I didn't see what he was pointing at. Then the light hit it, something small and white, half buried in the snow. He knelt, brushed it off, and froze. It was a tooth, a human one. He turned it in his glove, his face unreadable. "Probably animal," he muttered. But even he didn't sound convinced. Then Leah gasped. "There's more." I followed her gaze, and my stomach dropped. There was a trail, tiny, glinting white shapes scattered in a thin, curving line through the trees. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. A trail of teeth. None of us spoke for a few seconds. The wind pressed through the branches, whispering faintly. The officer beside Burke whispered, "You ever seen anything like that?" Burke shook his head. "Nope. Never." I wanted to say something, that we should leave, that this wasn't natural. But my mouth was dry, my throat tight. I just kept staring. They weren't old or decayed. They were clean. Some still had bits of gum clinging to the roots, frozen stiff. Leah started walking toward them. "We have to see where it goes." Burke called after her. "Wait! We should call this in." But she didn't stop. None of us did. We just followed. The trail wound through the forest like something had dropped them one by one, leading us deeper, always deeper. Each step crunched in the snow, echoing off the rocks around us. At some point, the sky dimmed again, that kind of gray light that makes it impossible to tell what time it is. My hands were numb. My breath came out in short white bursts. Then we saw it, the mouth of the cave. It wasn't large, just a low opening at the base of a rock face, half covered in frost. The teeth led straight into it. Burke stopped at the edge. Hell no. This is where we call it. Leah turned to him, her eyes wild. You don't understand. That's where he is. He stepped forward, blocking her. Ma'am, I understand exactly what this looks like, and that's why we're not going in blind. But Leah was already dropping to her knees, shining her light into the darkness. Mark, she shouted. Her voice cracked on his name. The echo that came back wasn't right. It bounced off the walls too long, stretching out, bending around the syllables like something else was repeating it under its breath. Burke's partner swore quietly. That ain't an echo. I leaned forward, shining my light too. The beam cut through a haze of frost and dust. The floor inside was slick with ice, and that's when I saw something glinting deeper inside, a shape on the ground, another tooth, then another, and another. Burke exhaled. You've got to be kidding me. They didn't just lead to the cave. They continued inside. He looked back at us, his jaw tight. We go in 30 feet, no more. Then we're out, got it? None of us argued. The air changed as soon as we stepped in. It was colder, heavier, the kind of cold that burns when you breathe it in. The walls were slick with moisture, and the sound of dripping water echoed somewhere ahead. Every few steps, my boot would kick another tooth, sending it skittering across the ice. It was like the ground was paved with them. Leah whispered, He's close. I can feel it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My light caught something ahead, a patch of black against the frost. A jacket. Blue. Burke knelt and touched it. It was frozen stiff, half embedded in the ice. It's his, Leah said, her voice breaking. Burke didn't answer. He just stared at the fabric, then looked deeper into the tunnel. That's when we heard it. A sound. Not human. Not animal. A slow, wet shuffle echoing from deeper in the cave. Burke drew his gun, his breath clouding in the beam of his flashlight. Who's there? The sound stopped, then a whisper. Leah. I swear to God it was his voice. Burke's partner hissed, Back out! Now! But Leah didn't move. She took a step forward. Mark? The light caught something in the dark, a pale shape crawling just out of view. For a moment, it almost looked human. Arms, legs, the outline of a face, but it was wrong. Too thin, too long. And when it turned toward us, the light hit its mouth. Wide, trembling, filled with nothing but gaps, no teeth. Not a single one. It hissed softly, a broken exhale that didn't sound like breathing at all. Burke fired. The sound exploded in the cave, echoing again and again until I couldn't tell what was real. The thing vanished into the dark. We ran. None of us spoke. Just the sound of boots hitting ice and the teeth clattering under our feet as we scrambled back into the cold air. By the time we got outside, Leah was gone. Burke spun around, shouting her name. I looked back, the teeth in the snow glinting faintly, leading back toward the cave. But there was a new set beside them now. Footprints, barefoot, small. They led the opposite direction, away from us. Burke chased after them, calling her name, but I didn't follow. I just stood there staring at the cave mouth because I could still hear something inside, that same broken shuffle, that same whisper, only now. It was saying my name. When the others finally dragged Burke back, he was shaking. They called for backup, for more searchers, for anything. But by the time they came back the next morning, the storm had filled everything in. The cave entrance was gone, sealed by ice and snow. And so was the trail. No Leah. No footprints. No teeth. They said the mountain shifted overnight, that it happened sometimes after heavy snow. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The official report said the search was suspended due to weather. But Burke quit the force a week later. He told me something once before he left town. He said that when he tried to sleep that night, he could still hear her calling his name in her voice. And in his. And that when he checked the inside of his glove the next morning, the one he used to touch that jacket, he found a tooth inside it, perfectly clean. I haven't gone back to the mountain. But sometimes, when it snows heavy outside and the wind shifts just right, I swear I can hear it. That faint click of enamel on enamel, like something smiling from the dark. And I wonder if it's her, or if she's still in there. Collecting more. I grew up in a small town, the kind where nothing ever really happens, and when it does, it sticks. People remember. They whisper about it for years after until it becomes part of the place itself. For us, it was the playground, the one behind the old elementary school. I was 10 when it happened, when those 3 kids went missing. It started on a Sunday. Late afternoon, the kind of day where the air feels too still, like the whole town is holding its breath. I remember riding my bike past the schoolyard, the sun low enough that the swings threw long, crooked shadows across the dirt. The playground was empty except for them, Tyler, Mia, and little Josh. They were all younger than me, 2nd or 3rd grade. I didn't know them well, just faces I'd see every morning at the bus stop. They were laughing, chasing each other around the slide. I remember that sound and their laughter. It carried far in that cold air. Then it stopped. Just stopped. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured they went home. But that night, their parents went door to door, knocking on every house in town. They hadn't come back for dinner. By morning, the cops were already there, tape strung around the swings, flashing lights in the snow. It felt wrong, seeing something so bright and loud in a place that used to be so ordinary. Mom wouldn't let me near it, but I remember watching from across the street as they searched. The swings creaked in the wind. The slide was half buried in frost. And then I saw it, one of the officers, kneeling by the sandbox. He held something up in his gloved hand, a shoe, tiny, blue. The next day, the town changed. Parents stopped letting their kids play outside. Teachers cried in class. The local news wouldn't leave. But no one knew anything. No footprints past the playground. No signs of a struggle, just silence. It was like they'd been erased. Weeks went by, and the search turned into cleanup. They drained the creek, combed the woods, even dug up part of the old parking lot. Nothing. Eventually, life went back to normal. Or at least, it tried to. But not for everyone. Mia's mom used to sit by the fence every morning, wrapped in her coat, staring at the swings. Sometimes she'd talk like Mia was still there, like she was just late for recess, and every so often people would claim they heard it, that faint creak of a swing moving on its own, even when there was no wind. By spring, the police took the tape down. They said the case was open but inactive. That phrase stuck with me, open but inactive. Like the town itself. The playground stayed empty after that. No one wanted to go near it. Not the little kids, not the teenagers, not even the dogs. But I did. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to see for myself that there was nothing there. Maybe I just didn't believe it. One afternoon, a few months later, I went back. It was quiet. Too quiet. The snow had melted, leaving behind patches of mud and dead grass. The metal slide was streaked with rust. I parked my bike by the fence and stood there for a while, just listening. That's when I noticed something. The sandbox. It had been filled in, smoothed over, but the surface wasn't flat anymore. Someone, or something, had been digging. There were small marks like handprints pressed deep into the dirt. I remember stepping closer, crouching down, running my fingers along one of them. It was small, a child's hand, and cold. The air around the sandbox felt different, heavier. Like the sound had been sucked out of the world. That's when I heard it, a faint metallic creak. The swings, they were moving, just barely, like someone had brushed past them. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. No one was there. But the chains moved again, slow, rhythmic. One swing, then another, like someone was climbing on. I backed up, eyes on the empty seats. Hello? I remember saying it out loud, even though my voice sounded strange, hollow. Then, a sound. A laugh. Soft, distant. It came from behind the slide. I turned. Nothing. Just the metal bars, the patch of frozen dirt, and the long shadows stretching toward the fence. Another laugh, higher this time. I stepped forward, around the slide. My breath came out white in front of me, and there they were, 3 small shapes sitting in the dirt near the edge of the playground. At first I thought they were kids, but they weren't moving. I blinked. Gone. Just empty ground. But the sound was still there. It wasn't laughter anymore. It was whispering. Too low to make out, but it circled the playground like it was coming from everywhere at once. I ran. I don't even remember getting back on my bike. I just remember pedaling home so fast my legs burned. When I got there, Mom was waiting on the porch. She said she'd been calling me for an hour. Said she'd looked out the window and saw me standing across the street from the school, just staring. I told her I wasn't, that I'd only been there for a few minutes, but she swore it was longer. Days went by. I tried to forget about it, but every night I'd dream of that sound, that faint creak of metal, that soft whisper under the snow. Then about a week later, they closed the playground. The principal said it was unsafe, something about unstable ground. But no one bought that. The real reason was what they found, under the sandbox. They were digging to replace the wood frame, and the workers found something buried deep beneath it. Not the kids, just their things. A small red mitten, a backpack strap, and that same tiny blue shoe. They said there were handprints in the dirt below, like the kids had been reaching upward. The site was sealed that same day. The town built a fence around it, and eventually they tore the whole playground down. Now it's just an empty lot. Grass and dirt and a few old benches no one sits on. But sometimes when I walk past it, I swear I can still hear it. The faint creak of those swings, the echo of laughter carried by the wind. And every winter, when the snow starts to fall again, the footprints reappear. 3 sets. Small. Perfectly clear. They stop right at the edge of where the playground used to be, and they never lead back out. People around here don't like talking about the highway at night, especially not Highway 37. It's one of those long, empty stretches that cuts through nothing, just trees, power lines, and fog. The kind of road that makes you start questioning how far you've really gone. After the kids disappeared from the playground that winter, folks started remembering other stories, other disappearances, all of them linked to that same road. At first, I thought it was just small-town gossip, but the way people said it, in hushed voices, eyes drifting toward the tree line, it didn't sound like a story. It sounded like a warning. That's when I started hearing about it, the man in gray. They said he'd been seen off Highway 37 for years. Always the same, standing near the woods, motionless. Sometimes at dusk, sometimes just before dawn. Never close enough to see his face, but always watching. I didn't believe it, not really. Until my cousin Sarah told me what she saw. It was late March, about 3 weeks after the last snowfall. She'd been driving home from her night shift at the hospital, half asleep, when she saw a figure on the shoulder of the highway. She said he was tall, wearing a gray coat that almost blended into the fog. At first, she thought it was someone who'd broken down. But as her headlights swept over him, he didn't move, didn't even flinch. He was facing the woods, not the road. That detail stuck with her, how still he was, how wrong it looked. When she told me, I laughed, said maybe it was a scarecrow or something. But she didn't laugh. She said his head turned, just slightly, as she passed. And even though she couldn't see his face, she knew he was looking at her. That night, she had a nightmare. She said she woke up to the sound of gravel crunching outside her window. But when she looked, there was nothing there. A few days later, more people started claiming they'd seen him. A delivery driver, a couple coming back from the city, even a cop. Every story was almost identical. A man in gray, standing near the tree line, hands at his sides, head slightly tilted. No one ever saw him walk. No one ever saw him leave. He was just there 1 second, gone the next. By then, Highway 37 had turned into a kind of local curse. People avoided it at night. Truckers took the longer route south just to skip that stretch. Still, part of me didn't believe it. I wanted to, but I didn't, until the dash cam video. It surfaced on a local forum. Some guy from out of town driving through during a rainstorm. You could hear his music, the wipers, the hum of the engine. Nothing unusual. Then around the 22-minute mark, the headlights caught something. A figure, standing by the trees. Gray coat, head tilted. The video cuts out right after that. Static, then silence. When the car was later found, it was empty. Doors unlocked. Engine still running. The man who uploaded it never logged in again. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about him, about why he stood there, what he was waiting for. Some people said he was a spirit, the ghost of someone who died on that road years ago. Others said he was something older, something that had been there long before the highway existed. There was even an old story, buried in one of the town records, about a man who went missing back in the 1930s. A surveyor, working on the early road layout. They said his partner found his tent torn open, tools scattered, and a long trail of footprints leading into the woods. Only one set of prints. They never found him, but locals described a stranger wandering the outskirts for months afterward. A man in gray. The same description, same place. When I read that, it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. I started driving Highway 37 every few nights just to see. I told myself it was curiosity, research maybe, but I think I just wanted to know if it was real. The first few times nothing happened, just the sound of my tires on wet asphalt, the occasional flash of headlights from oncoming cars, but every drive made me feel watched, like someone was just beyond the edge of my vision. On the fourth night, I pulled over near mile marker 19. There's a small clearing there where the trees open up and you can see a bit of the sky. I sat there for a while, engine running, window cracked. It was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw it, movement between the trees. Just a flicker at first, like the fog shifting. But then it stepped forward, and I saw him, tall, thin, wearing that same gray coat. His face was shadowed, but I could tell he was facing me. He didn't move, didn't raise a hand or take a step, just stood there. And in that moment, every sound disappeared. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade out. It was like the world was holding its breath. I blinked, and he was gone. The woods looked normal again, but I wasn't imagining it, because when I got home later, I noticed something on my windshield. Smudges, long streaks, like someone had dragged their fingers across the glass, and there were prints, small grayish fingerprints running along the side mirror, cold to the touch. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I tried to tell Sarah. She didn't want to hear it. Said she'd been seeing him more too, in reflections, in windows, even once in her rearview mirror when she was backing out of the driveway. She said every time she blinked, he got closer. A week later, she stopped showing up to work. Her car was found on the shoulder of Highway 37. Engine cold, doors locked, purse still inside, no footprints, just the faint outline of a hand on the driver's side window and smeared across the hood, written in dust. 2 words. Still watching. The police report called it vandalism, but I know better, because the same night they found her car, I woke up to something tapping against my bedroom window. 3 slow taps. When I pulled the curtain back, the yard was empty, but the glass was cold. And when I leaned closer, I could see it. The faint shape of a palm. 5 long fingers, pressed against the outside. After that, I stopped driving at night. Stopped talking about him, too. But it didn't matter. Once you've seen him, it's like he doesn't leave. He lingers in reflections, in the space between trees, in the dark glass of the TV before it turns on. And if you stare long enough, you'll start to notice details. How the coat hangs wrong. How the shadows bend around him instead of over him. The last time I saw him was 2 nights ago. I was coming home late, took a shortcut I shouldn't have. Highway 37 again. There was fog, heavy enough to blur the road ahead, and through it, I swear to God, I saw him standing right in the middle of the lane. I slammed the brakes, horn blaring, but he didn't move. As my headlights hit him, the gray seemed to ripple like smoke caught in wind. And then he was gone, just gone. When I got out, the air felt wrong. The fog hung thick, heavy, and right where he'd been standing, the pavement was wet. Not from rain, but from something darker. It looked almost like oil, spreading out in long, finger-like streaks. I followed them a few steps, until they led straight to the woods. That's when I saw it. Something carved into one of the trees. Letters, rough and uneven. Still watching. The same words from Sarah's car. I didn't wait to read the rest. I ran back to the truck and didn't stop driving until I saw the lights of town. Now every night, I draw my curtains tight. I turn off my phone, unplug the TV, keep every reflective surface covered, because sometimes, when it's quiet, I can hear it again. That faint tapping against the window. 3 slow knocks, and if I ever open the curtain again, I know what I'll see. A man in gray, standing by the trees, just watching. It's strange how silence can spread through a town faster than sound ever could. After the 3 kids vanished from the playground, everything in our little town just slowed down. The swings stopped creaking. The laughter that used to echo from the park was gone. You could almost feel the empty spaces where the noise used to be. Everyone was waiting for something, though none of us knew what. Weeks passed. The posters faded. The news trucks left. Even the police stopped driving by the playground at night. And just when people started trying to move on, it happened. The toys came back. It was early morning when the first parent found them. The Johnsons woke up to see their daughter's stuffed rabbit sitting neatly on their front porch. Clean, dry. It looked freshly washed. They said it didn't make sense because it had rained all night. Hard, too, but the toy wasn't even damp. An hour later, the Ramirez family found their son's toy truck, parked perfectly at the edge of their welcome mat. By noon, every family who'd lost a child that night had something waiting for them outside. All 3 toys, all neatly placed, like someone had arranged them with care. No footprints, no fingerprints. Nothing on their cameras either, and just a gap in the recording around 3:14 a.m. And then the toys were just there. I remember hearing the story over the radio that morning. I was drinking coffee, half awake, when the host's voice cracked a little while reading the report. Local authorities are investigating the unexplained return of the missing children's belongings. I almost dropped my mug. My first thought was that it had to be some kind of cruel prank, someone trying to keep the wound open. But when I went by the Johnsons' house later that day, the look on Mrs. Johnson's face told me it wasn't that simple. She was standing in her doorway, holding that rabbit against her chest like it was her daughter. And when she saw me, she didn't even speak, just shook her head, eyes red, mouth trembling like she'd been crying for hours. She whispered, "It smells like her." I didn't know what to say. The rabbit did smell faintly of something sweet, like the pink shampoo their daughter used. But it had been weeks. No toy should hold a scent like that. That night, people started locking their doors earlier than usual. Curtains stayed shut. And even though no one wanted to admit it, everyone was afraid the next thing to appear wouldn't be a toy. The next day, more things showed up. At first, they were small: a mitten, a hair clip, a shoelace, all in perfect condition, even though each of those items had been part of the original evidence from the search. I know because I'd helped catalog them. They were tagged, bagged, and stored in the police evidence locker. There was no way they should have been anywhere near those porches. The sheriff swore up and down that nothing had been moved, but I checked myself. Every item was gone, just gone. That was when I started losing sleep. I'd drive past the park at night, hoping to see some sign of who was behind it, but the swings never moved anymore. The grass didn't even bend in the wind. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. The strangest thing, though, came on the third night. Mr. Ramirez called me after midnight. Said there was something outside his house again. When I got there, he was standing on the porch with a flashlight. Trembling, he pointed to the step. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Just a small circular mark on the concrete, like a wet ring. Then I saw the shape next to it. A handprint, small, child-sized, pressed perfectly into the cement. Though the concrete had been dry for years, when the light hit it, I noticed something else. Small bits of dirt under each print, like whoever left them had crawled up from the ground. We called the sheriff, but by the time he got there, the prints were gone, completely vanished. The next morning, word spread fast. People started whispering about how they were coming back. Some said it was the forest reclaiming what was taken. Others said it was something darker, that the kids weren't really gone at all. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I drove out to the edge of town, to the old trail near the woods behind the playground. The air felt colder there, heavier somehow. And when I turned off the engine, I could hear something. Faint, almost too quiet, a sound like wind passing through hollow metal. It took me a second to realize it was the sound of a swing moving, just one. I got out of the car and walked toward it. My breath clouding in front of me, the moonlight made everything look washed out and pale. The swing moved slowly, creaking just enough to make my skin crawl. Then I saw them, small shapes in the grass under the slide. 3 of them, toys, stacked on top of each other, perfectly aligned. The same 3 that had been found on those porches days earlier, and lying beside them. Half buried in the dirt was something else, a photograph. It was old, water-stained, bent at the edges, but I could still make it out. 3 kids, smiling, standing right here, by the slide. Their shadows stretched behind them. But there was something wrong with the picture. Behind the kids, in the background, there was a tall shape near the trees. A man, dressed in gray. His face was blurred, like the photo had caught him mid-motion. Except, the shadows were wrong. The kid's shadows stretched one way, his stretched the other. I dropped the photo and ran. By the time I got home, I couldn't stop shaking. I locked the doors, shut every curtain, turned off every light, but I kept hearing something. Soft thuds. At first, I thought it was just my heart pounding, but then I realized it was coming from outside. I walked to the door, looked through the peephole, and froze. There was something on my porch. A small object, sitting right in the center of the welcome mat. When I opened the door, slowly, just a crack. I saw it clearly. A toy truck, old, rusted in places. But the paint, it was still that same bright blue, the same toy that belonged to one of the missing kids. I recognized it instantly, and under the truck, someone had placed a folded piece of paper. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. The note wasn't written in pen. It looked like it had been carved, scraped into the paper with something sharp. It said, "Playtime's not over. I dropped it right there." Locked the door. All night I sat in the living room with every light on, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. But around 4 a.m. I heard it again. That faint, metallic creak of a swing carried on the wind. When morning came, the toy was gone, but the note wasn't. It was still there, wedged between the boards of the porch like something had tried to drag it back. And later that day, the Johnsons' front door was found open. Their porch light shattered. The stuffed rabbit was gone. No one knows what happened to them after that. But sometimes, when I pass by that old park, I swear I see small shapes near the swings, moving just out of the corner of my eye. And once, late at night, I could have sworn I heard laughter, faint, distant, but not gone. Almost like it had been, waiting there all along. You can tell when a forest doesn't want you. There. It's not something you see right away. It's what you feel, like the air thickens around you, like every sound dies before it reaches your ears. That's how it felt that night when I joined the search. It had been almost a month since the toys appeared, and people in town were restless again. Rumors were spreading about lights seen in the woods, about laughter heard in the dark. The police didn't believe it, of course, but they agreed to one last sweep, mostly to quiet everyone down. They called it a volunteer night search. I called it a mistake. Still, I went, because I couldn't stop thinking about those kids, and because part of me, the part that hadn't slept right in weeks, wanted to see whatever was out there. We met by the edge of the tree line just before midnight. There were 8 of us, a few deputies, some local volunteers, and me. Everyone wore reflective vests and carried flashlights. Our breath hung in the cold air like steam from a machine. The sheriff gave a short talk about staying in pairs, about not wandering off the trail. Then he told us something else, something that didn't sit right with me. He said, "If you hear voices, don't answer. Just radio in and keep moving." At the time, it sounded like a precaution. Later, it felt more like a warning. We split into 2 groups and started walking. The forest swallowed us faster than I expected. Within minutes, the lights from town disappeared completely, and all I could hear was snow crunching under our boots. I stayed near Deputy Wallace. Quiet guy. Mid-40s, used to hunt these woods before all this happened. He said he'd never seen them so still. "No rabbits," he muttered. "No birds. It's not natural." He was right. Even the wind felt muted, like the whole forest was holding something back. We followed the frozen stream deeper in, past where the old trail ended. Every now and then, one of the volunteers would call out a name. Emma? Tyler? Sarah? But the sound didn't travel. It just kind of dropped into the trees. About an hour in, we reached a narrow clearing. The sheriff's voice crackled over the radio, telling us to spread out just a little. "Eyes open, look for movement." So we did. And that's when I first heard it. It was faint, soft enough that I thought I imagined it at first. A high, wavering hum, coming from somewhere deeper in the trees. Wallace stopped walking. He turned toward the sound, listening. It grew louder, not wind, not an animal. It was music, children's voices, singing. Just a few notes at first, broken, uneven, like they were humming to remember the tune. Then the words came. I couldn't understand them at first, but the melody felt familiar, like a nursery rhyme I'd forgotten. Wallace looked at me, eyes wide. "You hear that?" I nodded. It was coming from the north, somewhere past the ridge, where the trees grew denser and the ground sloped downward. We radioed the sheriff, told him we heard something. He said to stay put. "We'll regroup." But the singing was getting closer, and when you hear something like that in a place that should be silent, you don't want to wait around. Wallace whispered. Maybe one of the kids survived. I knew it wasn't possible. Not after this long. But I followed him anyway. The snow crunched under our boots as we moved toward the sound. Each step made it clearer. 3 voices, maybe 4. Young, soft, singing in perfect harmony. They weren't crying. They weren't scared. They sounded happy. That somehow made it worse. The words began to take shape as we got closer. It was the same song that used to play on the playground carousel, that little chime that went in circles when the kids spun it too fast. I remember the melody even now. Round and round we go to sleep. Down below the roots run deep. Wallace stopped suddenly and pointed ahead. "Light," he whispered. Through the trees, I saw it too. A soft, flickering glow. We turned off our flashlights and crouched low. It looked like candlelight moving slowly between the trunks, maybe 100 feet away. The singing was coming from there. "Could be campers," Wallace said, though his voice didn't sound convinced. We crept closer, careful not to make noise. The air felt heavy, almost wet, like the cold had turned thick around us. Then the voices stopped, just like that. The light vanished too. Everything went silent. Wallace turned his head toward me, ready to whisper something. But before he could, a sound came from behind us, a laugh, childlike, soft, right by my ear. I spun around, flashlight up. Nothing. "Just trees," Wallace cursed under his breath, raising his own light, but the batteries flickered, then died completely. The forest went black. That was when I heard it again, the singing. But this time, it wasn't distant. It was around us, circling, voices weaving through the trees. Moving in slow loops, round and round we go to sleep. My chest tightened. I wanted to call for help, but my radio only hissed with static. Wallace tried his too. Same thing. Then we saw movement, small shapes between the trees, darting just outside the beam of my flashlight. They looked like children, running, laughing, but every time the light got close, they slipped away. The song got faster. The rhythm changed, not cheerful anymore, more like chanting, and in that rhythm I started to notice something else. There was a deeper voice beneath the others, a man's voice, low, steady, humming along, guiding the rest. I don't know how, but I recognized it. It was the same hum I'd heard on the radio weeks before, the one from the 911 call that had been recorded near the playground. The voice, people said, belonged to the man in gray. Wallace was whispering something, trying to pray maybe, but I barely heard him. I was staring into the dark, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. One of the children stopped moving. It was standing just a few feet ahead, half lit by the pale beam of my flashlight. Its face was wrong, blurred like the features couldn't stay still. Its mouth hung open, and when it sang, the sound didn't match the movement. The melody came from somewhere else. Wallace stumbled backward. His boot caught on a root, and he fell hard. The singing stopped again. And then, a whisper. So close I thought it came from my own head. Playtime's not over. Something touched my shoulder. I turned, swinging the flashlight wildly. Just trees again. But when I looked down at the snow, I saw them. Footprints. Small, bare, perfectly formed, leading deeper into the forest. They glowed faintly, like heat in the dark. I heard Wallace's radio crackle to life behind me, the sheriff yelling for us to report in. But I couldn't move. The footprints were fresh. I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe I thought they'd lead to answers. Maybe I was already too far gone to think clearly. The tracks wound between the trees, weaving toward a hollow in the earth, a dark opening that looked like it had been clawed out of the soil. The singing began again, soft this time, echoing from inside the ground. I stepped closer and shined my light into the hole. It wasn't deep, maybe 10 feet, but the bottom was covered in toys, hundreds of them, stuffed animals, cars, dolls, all stacked neatly like offerings, and among them, small bones, tiny teeth scattered like seeds in the dirt. Then something moved at the far end of the hole, a tall figure, crouched low, dressed in gray. He lifted his head, slowly, too slowly, and I saw that his eyes were completely black. He smiled, and when he did, a chorus of children's voices came from his mouth, all at once. That was the last thing I remember before Wallace grabbed me and dragged me backward, screaming at me to run. We didn't stop until we saw the headlights from the other search team cutting through the trees. When I looked back, the footprints were gone. The snow was smooth again, and the woods were silent. The sheriff says we imagined the singing, that it was the wind echoing through the trees. But I know what I heard. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind blows just right, I still hear that same melody coming from the tree line, soft, gentle, like a lullaby. Round and round we go to sleep. Down below, the roots run deep, and every time it fades, I swear I hear a man's voice just beneath it, humming the tune to himself, waiting. You'd be surprised how quiet a morgue can get after midnight. No humming machines. No movement. Just that low, sterile silence. The kind that makes your own breathing sound too loud. I'd been working there for years. I was used to it. Or at least I thought I was. My name's Alex Turner. County coroner for Meadow Ridge. Population 7,000. Most nights I was alone in that basement, finishing reports, labeling samples, checking the security logs. Nothing strange. Nothing cinematic, until the night I saw the footage. It started as routine. One of the orderlies, Carl, came up to my office holding a flash drive. His face was pale, eyes wide. He said the security system had flagged unusual movement in the cooler room at around 3:17 a.m. That wasn't unheard of. Sometimes equipment glitched or shadows triggered the motion sensors. But Carl wouldn't meet my eyes. He just said, "You should see it yourself." I sighed, took the drive, and told him to go home. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I wish he'd stayed. When I plugged it in, the screen filled with grainy black and white footage. 4 camera feeds, each showing a different angle of the body storage room. Long rows of stainless steel drawers, a single table in the center. The timestamp read EO3:16:48. At first, nothing moved. I watched for maybe 30 seconds. I almost turned it off. Then one of the drawers, 3rd row from the bottom, number 12, the B, shifted. It was subtle. Just a small jerk forward like someone had pushed from inside. I leaned closer. My pulse quickened. The drawer slid out another inch, then stopped. There was a pause. 10 seconds, 15, and then, slow, deliberate, the metal door swung open. The body inside was one I recognized. A man named Eli Harper, mid-30s, truck driver. Found dead on Highway 37 2 nights earlier. Hit and run. I'd done the autopsy myself. He was gone. No question. But there he was, lying still for a moment under the harsh fluorescent light before his chest began to rise, once, twice. Then he sat up. I froze. The footage had no sound, but I could almost hear the scrape of his skin against the metal, the clatter as his feet dropped to the floor. He didn't move like someone waking up. He moved like something trying to remember how. His head tilted left, then right, slow, searching. His mouth hung slightly open, but his eyes were rolled completely back, showing only the whites. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking. I kept watching, even when every part of me wanted to stop. At 03:18:11, Eli swung his legs fully off the table. His body looked rigid, like every joint fought him. He stood up, and then he turned, straight toward the camera. Even through that low-resolution feed, I swear he was looking at me. The light caught his face just enough to show a small tear in his cheek where the sutures had split. I could see the dark line where I'd sewn him shut. He took one step toward the camera, then another. Then the screen went black, just static. My first thought was a power surge, maybe a camera failure. But the timestamp kept running. The feed hadn't stopped. It was still recording, and yet everything after that moment was gone. When the picture came back, the drawer was closed. The room was empty. Eli Harper's body was still inside, the sheet perfectly in place. I felt cold all over. I replayed the footage 3 times. Each time, it ended the same way. I printed the report, filed it under equipment malfunction, and locked the drive in my desk drawer. I told myself it was a corrupted feed, a glitch maybe. That's what I wanted to believe, but that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, Carl didn't show up for work. We called his house. No answer. His wife said he'd left early to drop something off at the morgue, except he never arrived. That afternoon, I checked the security log again. New motion alert, same room, 03:19 a.m. The same timestamp, just 1 minute after the last one. My stomach dropped. I clicked play. It started the same way. Still, silent, just the shadows and stainless steel. Then, from the left side of the frame, something moved. Not a person. Something smaller. Carl's flashlight. It rolled slowly across the floor until it hit the leg of the central table and stopped. The timestamp flickered, then froze. The feed cut out. When I checked the physical logs, the door to the cooler had been opened at 03:18:52. No one had signed in or out. That night, I decided to check it myself. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted proof it wasn't real. Or maybe I already knew it was, and I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I waited until everyone left, then unlocked the cooler room and went in. It was freezing. The air always felt heavier there, like the walls held their breath. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. I stood by drawer 12B Eli Harper. Tag still there, still sealed. My hands trembled as I pulled the metal handle. The drawer slid open smoothly, the sound slicing through the silence. He was still there, still dead. Face calm, eyes shut. I stared for a long time. I don't know if I was waiting for him to move or hoping he wouldn't. Finally, I reached out to check the tag. It was damp, sticky. I pulled my hand back and saw a faint streak of red on my glove. Fresh blood. I stepped away fast, heart pounding. That's when the light overhead flickered. Once, twice, then went out. The generator kicked in immediately, but the emergency bulbs cast everything in a deep red glow. For a second, the shadows seemed to stretch across the walls, forming shapes that looked almost human. And then, clink. Something fell to the floor behind me. I turned. Drawer 12B was half open again. The sheet was still in place, but it had shifted slightly, like something had moved underneath it. I took one step back, then another. The air felt too thick, the light too dim. I was breathing too fast, and then a voice. Low, raspy, cold. Isn't it? It wasn't loud, but it came from right beside me. I swung around with my flashlight, scanning every corner. Nothing, no movement. No sound. Then, just behind me, I heard a metallic click. Drawer 12B slid shut on its own. I didn't stay after that. I locked up, called it a night, and didn't come back until the next morning. When I did, I found the sheriff waiting by my office. He said they'd found Carl's truck on Highway 37, about half a mile from the accident site where Eli Harper died. The driver's side door was open, engine still running. Inside, on the passenger seat, was one of our morgue tags. The name written on it wasn't Carl's, it was mine. I quit 2 days later, turned in my badge, handed over every file, and told them I needed a break. But I still have that flash drive. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe some part of me wants to believe it's just a glitch, a bad dream that got caught on tape. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I play it again. The timestamp always ends the same. 03-1811, but last night, something changed. Right before the feed cuts out, you can see a reflection in the camera lens. Not Eli, not Carl. It's me, standing right where the camera would have been, looking back at myself. Except I haven't been in that room since the night I left. And when I paused the frame, I noticed something else. The reflection wasn't moving the way I was. It was smiling, just standing there, waiting for me to hit play again. End of chapter 1, 404 words. There's a certain smell you never forget once you've worked around the dead long enough. It's not the decay, not exactly. It's something underneath that, like the air itself remembers what was lost. I'd been out of the job for a few weeks after the footage incident. Everyone thought I just cracked under pressure. They said I was seeing things, that the stress had finally gotten to me. Maybe they were right. But then I found the file. It showed up in my mailbox one morning. No return address, no postage, just my name written in black ink on a plain folder. Inside were photocopied documents, my handwriting, my notes, the official report from Eli Harper's case. Except it wasn't the same version I'd turned in. Half the pages were missing. The section describing the morgue footage, the body sitting up, the missing orderly, everything was gone. Completely redacted. Even the timestamps were scrubbed out, and stapled to the last page was a single typed sentence. The case file ends here. That's all it said. I sat there for a long time, just staring at it, trying to figure out who sent it, why. But what really got to me was that last phrase, like someone wanted to draw a line under everything that had happened. Like they wanted me to stop asking questions, but I couldn't. Because about 2 weeks after I got that file, I saw him again. Eli Harper, the man who died on Highway 37. The same man whose body I'd zipped into a bag, whose chest I'd stitched, whose drawer I'd seen move on that footage. He was standing in the frozen food aisle of a supermarket. It was a Sunday evening. I'd gone in for milk. I was exhausted, running on caffeine and insomnia. The place was nearly empty, just a few people scattered around. I remember hearing the squeak of the shopping cart wheels echoing down the aisle. The kind of sound that shouldn't feel eerie, but it did. I turned the corner, and there he was. At first, I didn't process it. He looked normal, alive. A man in a flannel jacket, jeans, pushing a basket. Nothing strange. But then he turned slightly, and the fluorescent light hit his face, and my heart stopped. It was him. The same pale skin. The same scar just below his lip where the autopsy incision had begun. He was studying a carton of eggs like nothing was wrong. My throat went dry. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, frozen, trying to make sense of it. He looked up, like he felt someone watching him, and for the briefest second, he smiled. That small, slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach his eyes. I dropped the milk and left the store without paying. When I got to my car, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even get the key into the ignition. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was someone who just looked like him. A coincidence. But then I remembered something. The tag they'd found in Carl's truck, the one with my name on it. I'd seen the handwriting, and when Eli looked at me in that store, I saw the same pattern of pen pressure, the same faint tilt in the letters. It hit me all at once that he'd written it. The man who was supposed to be dead. After that, I started seeing him everywhere, not clearly, just glimpses. Reflections in glass doors. A figure stepping off a curb just as I passed. Someone standing across the street, head tilted the way his did in the footage. Always near, but never close enough. I tried to tell someone. I really did. I called Sheriff Harlan, told him about the file, the supermarket, everything. He laughed at first, thought I was joking. Then he sighed and said, "Alex, the case is closed. You need to stop." I asked if I could come by and check the evidence log just to see if Eli's body was still accounted for. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said, "You don't need to worry about that." That's when I knew. Something wasn't right. The next day, I drove down to the county records building. I told them I needed to review the morgue storage list from the week of the accident. The clerk on duty, an older woman named Ruth, looked nervous. She kept flipping through pages like she didn't want me to see what was there. Finally, she said, "Looks like there's a clerical error. Drawer 12B shows empty." I asked her what she meant. She said the record had been updated 2 weeks ago. The same week I saw him in the store. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the grainy footage again. That moment where the drawer opened. His chest rose and his eyes rolled back white. But the longer I thought about it, the more something bothered me. The timestamp. 3/18/11. It wasn't random. I checked the store receipt from that night, the one I dropped before I ran out. The time printed on it? 3:18:11 p.m., exactly 12 hours apart. After that, things started happening in my house. Small things at first. Footsteps in the hall when no one was there. The faint hum of a refrigerator door opening by itself. Then one night my phone rang, no caller ID. When I answered, I heard breathing, and then a whisper. Cold. "Isn't it?" The same words I'd heard that night in the morgue. The line went dead. I don't even remember dropping the phone. I just remember sitting there staring at the dark hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there. When I turned the lights on, everything looked normal, but I noticed something. The front door, the deadbolt. It was unlocked. The next morning, I drove to the station again, but Sheriff Harlan wouldn't see me. His deputy told me Harlan had taken personal leave. When I asked where he went, she said she didn't know. That was 2 days ago. Now I'm sitting here, reading through this file again. The line still stares up at me. The case file ends here, but it doesn't. Because I saw him again today. This time, outside my house, I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to eat something, pretending everything was fine. The window over the sink looks out at the street, and through the glass, across the road, under the streetlight, I saw a man standing there. Flannel jacket, jeans, his face hidden just enough by the angle of the light. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. When I blinked, he was gone. But when I went outside, I found footprints leading from the sidewalk to my front steps, the same pattern I'd seen on the morgue tile when I replayed the footage. Bare feet, leaving faint, wet marks. Even though the ground was dry, I followed them until they just stopped halfway up the porch, right beneath my window. I don't know what's happening anymore. I don't know if I'm losing my mind or if he's really out there. All I know is that last night when I checked my phone again, there was a new voicemail. No number. Just static. I played it 3 times before I realized there was something faint beneath the noise, a soft humming sound, almost like someone singing. And just before the recording ends, a voice whispers, clear as day, "Come finish the autopsy."